And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another week, another edition after a bit of a break, after a bit of a hiatus, after another week of the PondCast, episode number 56, your weekly dose of StarCraft 2 news. I'm, of course, VIP with you. I'm joined by our lovely producer, Kuro, and, of course, by the people in the chat. Welcome, one and all, to our weekly, I would say typically podcast, but in recent times, of course, Yakui's had to, he's, of course, excelling IRL, now has a full-time job, now has less time to join us here, so we have decided to change the format a little bit. Regardless, still going over all the news of the week, but again, we'll see how we adjust, we'll see how we do, actually how things turn out, how things do turn out. Regardless, there's a lot to catch up on. Now, for those, of course, that are curious, we didn't get to have a podcast last week. We did miss a week of podcast. The reason for this is, of course, EWC. Esports World Cup was all week long during the middle of the week, and we had casts on the weekend as well, so we had no free time last week to actually host a podcast. So because of that, unfortunately, we did miss a week, which means we have even more to catch up on. So this might be a little bit of a longer podcast. We'll see. We'll try to temper ourselves as well. Bearing in mind, we also have another cast in a couple of hours. I said a couple of hours, in around like 6 or so hours time, maybe a little bit more. We are going to be live with the Sunny Lake Cup. That is going to be later on this evening. So we do have a bit of a cutoff period, but we should still have plenty of time to jump in and to get into the week, the news of the week here in StarCraft 2. Here we go, as we are jumping into our first event, into our first bit of news here. That was, of course, the biggest event of the week, EPIC.LAN. EPIC.LAN number 54. This was pre-EWC, bear that in mind. But a shout out to all those working behind the scenes at EPIC.LAN, because this event has been running for many, many years, and it has continued to run on a very, very, very consistent and regular basis. It's been amazing to see just the non-stop support from the UK scene, from the English scene, running these events. And of course, these are open to all players, as long as you can be at the event live. And we actually have seen some players travel in recent times. Again, it's only a recent kind of change. Typically, we have seen mainly UK players competing in this tournament, but as of a couple of editions ago, as of, I want to say, a year ago at this point, we have seen a couple of players make that trek. Players like Geralt. Geralt, of course, this is not his first EPIC.LAN win. I believe now his second, maybe even third. But Geralt, he has now become more of a regular here at these events. We've seen Lorimbo as well. He was also in this tournament, so great to see Lorimbo make his return. And for the first time, we have Fiant. I don't believe Fiant has gone to this event in the past, so really cool to see more international representation. Again, it's great to see, one, that this event is regular, two, that we have players from the international community, from the European community, able to come in and take part as well, and travel over and start taking part in the tournament. So Geralt, he does make it to the finals, does take the entire tournament. We had Fiant likewise making it to the grand finals as well. Fiant, it was not an easy road for him. He did actually have a back and forth against Risky. Risky, I would probably say, is the strongest player in the UK. I mean, I say that, I think I might lean towards Eba actually, but I don't see Eba here. Just saying. Where is he? So we're missing a couple of key UK players, but we had a gamer Richie, we had Risky, we had Roscoe, we had Nico as well. We had Figaro once again, of course, and many of the other regular competitors. I see Distan. Hey, Distan has been playing in our tournaments as of late. So really cool to see Risky. I mean, he made it all the way to the lower bracket finals, where he went up against Fiant, barely went the way of Fiant, and then Geralt had a more dominant performance, not dropping a single map in the entire tournament. Again, Geralt, he's coming in as the highest rated player for sure. He's one of the best Protoss players in all of Europe, so he does walk away with a win. But regardless, really cool to see him traveling, really cool to see Fiant traveling as well, and I'm hoping that this does spark a little bit of competitive drive here amongst the other UK players to compete, to improve, and to take part. Looking at you, Eba. Eba. Yeah. Regardless, congratulations to Geralt for claiming the event. Likewise, shout out to Streamer Zone. Looks like Geralt's team did help sponsor and support his travels to the event as well, to the EPIC.LAN tournament. And again, maybe in the future, we'll see more players traveling to EPIC.LAN as well. Speaking of, we do have the announcement of the next EPIC.LAN. Already, again, just showing just how regular this tournament is. But we have another EPIC.LAN. It is going to be taking place at the end of October, beginning of November, 30th of October to the 2nd of November. I say that, I almost misspoke saying that it was at the end of this year. I believe it's going to be in 2026. Okay, so next year. Next year in November, unless that's a bit of a typo, but I believe that is for next year, is going to be the next EPIC.LAN, and you can already start to purchase tickets and get ready for that event. So again, we already have news of the next EPIC.LAN. And again, congratulations to girls. And again, this was pre-EWC. Then that led into Esports World Cup. The Esports World Cup itself, it was, of course, the grand finals, the biggest event of the year. Everything was building up to it. There was a lot of intensity coming into it as well. And, I mean, it was a very, very intense, very hectic time period for us, as you can imagine. When I say for us, for the StarCraft community, of course, we had so many tournaments condensed into such a short period of time to be able to determine who can actually be at EWC. Referring to Bellingen's Dagora, we are talking about a DreamHack Dallas. We're talking about GSL Season 1 and GSL Season 2. We'll get into more of that later, but we had a lot of GSLs. We had, of course, all the online qualifiers as well. We had just so many tournaments all jam-packed into like a 2-month period. And we got through it. We did get through it. Really intense period of time. And of course, that led into the World Cup, into the Esports World Cup itself. Again, it was a 4-day event. It was a 4-day event, 4 days from the middle of the week as well. Unfortunately, we didn't quite get a weekend time slot. It was in the middle of the week instead. Again, EWC, they're still ongoing. They're still ongoing with their other esports, of course, and they just go from one esport to the other, to the other, to the other. Unfortunately, StarCraft 2 was slated to go into the middle of the week instead of the weekend, so I'm sure that did impact some interest. I'm sure that did impact some viewership, despite that viewership was looking amazing for the tournament. And apparently, looking at the stats, looking at the esports charts, EWC 2025 actually was the most popular, the most watched StarCraft 2 tournament since IM Katowice 2021, which is crazy. It's insane that we haven't had as large of an event, as large of a watched event since then, since 2021, despite there being some really amazing tournaments, whether it was EWC last year, other IM Katowices as well. Really surprising to see that that it wasn't until now that we kind of reached that goal and that we kind of reached those upper echelons. I'm sure partly because something that we should also get into is that they were giving away Twitch drops. There were Twitch drops on the main Twitch channel that were providing commanders, I believe, co-op commanders, and I'm sure a lot of people that did incentivize a lot of people to tune in, and then they stuck around because of the content, because of the tournament, because of the matches themselves. I'm sure that also did impact the viewer base, the viewership, and the interest of first tuning in and then kind of like locking them in, right? Like in their claws into the viewer. They're like, hey, this is pretty good. Then they stick around, then they watch the entire thing. So really cool to see that Blizzard was able to work with that they were able to work with Twitch and allow for those Twitch drops to occur, and to help support the event itself, to help support StarCraft. When it comes to the event, again, it was a very intense period of time. I will say that the days themselves were a little bit short. I want to say they may have been shorter than last year. They were around like 8 to 9 hours long, compared to like a day of DreamHack or a day of IM Katowice, which are typically day-long events. I mean, hey, even Fusion Esports League, for example, was around like 12, 13 hours. Here, this was a little bit less. It was around 8 to 9 hours per day, which I appreciated. I appreciated. I didn't have to commit the entire day to watching and to casting the tournament. Thankfully, of course, the event was open to co-streamers, and we were some of the co-streamers who did cast the entire tournament ourselves. I know that there were other co-streamers out there like M. Canning, like Sal Uppertree, Berry Crunch as well, and of course other language streamers alongside them, of course. But yeah, personally I did appreciate it, but I do know that this really did hurt mainly American viewers, or I say American, viewers from the Americas, so Latino America, North America as well, and Central America. I know that did negatively impact them just because of the time slots. Basically, at least I guess it also kind of it was okay for us, but it would start in the evenings here in Australia, here for Southeast Asia as well. It would end deep late into the night. For Europe, it would start in the morning, and in the evening for the Americas, it would start at like 3, 4 a.m. in the morning, and then by the time it ended, it'd be like again around like midday, maybe I say midday, like maybe around like 3 p.m., 4 p.m. sort of thing, just as people are coming back from work. So especially in the middle of the week, like if you're out there, if you have a full-time job, well, it would begin, you'd be asleep, you'd have to get up, go to work. By the time you get back from work, the event would be over. Like, so watching it live, if you're in the Americas, was actually quite a difficult task, especially because it was in the middle of the week. So that did hinder viewership, I'm sure. And I mean, considering that we hit peak viewership, could have been even larger, could have been even bigger if we did have a weekend slot. So that's a little bit unfortunate as well when it comes to the time slots and who would be available to actually watch the event itself. Again, it was catered a little bit more to the European viewer base just because of the time that it ended, instead of progressing a little bit longer into the night, which is what we're used to when it comes to like an I Am Katowice, for example, which does go longer into the night. As here, it was ending a lot sooner, which kind of led into how short the broadcasts have been. But regardless, when it comes to the event itself, we did see quite an interesting kind of lineup here. There were a lot of high expectations for certain players, like Clem, like Hero as well, Cyril, Classic, Raynor, a lot of very high expectations for them. Middling expectations for Mara, for example, but we had some really, really good matches. For me personally, the highlights of these matches, the highlight of the tournament, were Raynor's series. Raynor versus Maru was incredible. Raynor versus Cyril, also incredible as well. In my opinion, those were the best matches, or some of the best matches of the entire tournament. It all began in the play-in stage, of course. The play-in stage, we had the last qualified players making it through into the event. Here it was brutal. Only 2 players could make it through. In the end, Estrella got knocked out early on by Bjorn, by Hero Marine. It was really unfortunate to see Estrella go down so early, especially considering how strong his PvT is, but you could argue that unfortunately he showed his hand a little bit too soon. In the lead up into EWC, Estrella, he was taking down Gumiho, he was taking down Akio, he was taking down Gumiho, taking down Bjorn, he was taking maps off of Clem, all in the late game, and it was broadcasted to all. To be fair, it wasn't like he was doing this in online weeklies. He was a little bit for his Clem series, but for the other matches, that was for the global EWC qualifier. Right, for the global qualifier, Estrella, he had to show his play, and everyone saw that he has arguably the best late game PvT out there. It was disgusting. So these series here were a lot shorter. The Beyond series, the Hero Marine series, the Big Gabe series, like, they were a lot shorter, and they did not allow Estrella to get to his final form, to get to his ideal, to get to that late game. So Estrella got knocked out a little bit earlier. Likewise, Lambert also knocked out as well. It was a little bit bittersweet. Like, I say bittersweet. Lambert himself, like, after he got knocked out, he's like, I like packed a suit just in case, like, so I can get onto the casting couch and join the analysts if I do get knocked out. So he was able to do that. After he got knocked out, he did join the analyst desk. He was able to be a part of the broadcast in some way, which was really cool. But again, unfortunately, he got knocked out early on. We had Bjorn and Gabe advancing on into the group stage. It was a little bit brutal because they did advance on to face off against the top 2 seeds of the tournament. We had Bjorn facing off against Clem and Gabe facing off against Cyril. So really brutal seats, but I mean, they got in nonetheless. When it comes to the group stage here, we saw that Clem, who was able to make it through. I was very impressed by Solar, by the way. Very impressed. Solar, to me, comes off as just a really solid preparation-based player. If you remember, Solar, he was the player that knocked Maru the hell out of last season of GSL, shutting down all the 8-raxes. Like, Maru, he was trying to 8-rax time and time again, and Solar shut him down completely. It was crazy how prepared Solar was in GSL. Here as well, Solar, he also came in very prepared. He also came in aware of Clem's weaknesses. Coming into this, the big weak point for Clem was a certain style in TVZ. If you remember DreamHack Dallas, if you remember Clem's series against Shin, Clem, he had a really hard time against this more defensive style, with Shin opening up Roach and then being hyper defensive and getting into Ultra Tech, getting into Hive Tech, getting into Ultra Tech from there. That was kind of the beginning of a big shift in ZVT meta, which Shin did pioneer back in DreamHack Dallas. Coming into this tournament, the big question was, Clem, has he been working on his TVZ? Has he been working on his Terran versus that style specifically, not just TVZ in general, but against that more defensive style, rushing into Ultra Tech? And we saw that he was still struggling against that. He even said it himself. Like, he had an interview and he spoke about how, like, yeah, he's still struggling against that kind of style. It's still his weak point right now in the matchup. And we saw certain players exploit that. Whether it was Solar, whether it was, Solar would be the one. So we had a really clutch and really close series between Clem and Solar. It was really cool to see. In the end, Clem did take it. Meanwhile, we had a really close series between Maru and Raynor. And something that I think caught a lot of people off guard here was how heavy mech-focused Maru was. I think everyone expected Maru to play mech a little bit, right? We expected a little bit of mech out of Maru, like once or twice in the series. No, he played mech 4 out of the 5 games. Like, he committed so hard. of course, making use of the cyclone and making full use of that, of course, and catching Rain off guard. I should also emphasize that Maru did go for different openers each time, but still embracing mech in different ways. And Rainer did have a hard time keeping up with that, but still had that back and forth. Still a really intense series. In the end, Maru did end the series with bio, not with mech, and that's how he was able to take the game on ley lines. So really interesting to see how Maru came into this. Again, we saw in the group stage, we had players like Björn, Trigger getting knocked out early on as well. Shout out to the B stream, by the way. We had Fear Dragon, The Muslim, and Steadfast traveling over to Riyadh to be a part of the B stream and to host this event. And so they were covering some of the matches here in the group stage as well. A lot of people were curious, so like, yo, where's Pig? Well, I guess this is another bit of an announcement. I think we said this during the last PondCast.
I don't
but
think
Pig
we
is
actually got to say that. I think that was like right after.
Oh, there you go. Well, he's now Pappy. He's a Pappy. So sad to Pig and Dot, and congratulations to the family that they have started. I believe Pig's newborn son is called Theo, if I remember correctly. So has a newborn son. The problem, originally Pig was going to be traveling to Riyadh and going to be a part of EWC, but their son was a little bit premature or preemptive by 24 weeks, really early. He came much earlier than expected, so that kind of threw a wrench in the works. Of course, Pig he stayed back to look after his family, and now has a newborn son. And of course has to take care of help take care of that and help take care of Dot as well. So because of that, he did not travel to EWC. The replacement for Pig was Steadfast. Kind of. The way that it worked was State was originally going to be in the B stream. He was originally going to be a B stream caster, but because Pig couldn't go, State got bumped up to mainstream, and then Steadfast got bumped up to B stream. So we kind of had casters kind of went up the rung of the ladder there in a certain sense to kind of fill Pig's shoes. That's why Pig was not at the tournament, and instead we had State and Steadfast kind of like working their way up instead. And they were able to, of course, broadcast. And again, shout out to Steadfast alongside Fear Dragon and The Muslim for being a part of that B stream. They were covering a lot of these matches as well. And in the end, we did have our qualified players. We had Clem, Maru, Rainer, Solar, Hero, Serral, Classic, and Cure, all making it through into the playoffs. A hefty lineup here. I would say more or less an expected lineup as well. Solo versus Shin was very close, was very close, was very clutch. I think a lot of people were disappointed with Björn's performance. Björn, he also got knocked out early on. I would say that, that was a brutal series between Björn and Zan. If you remember, Björn, he attempted to be hyper aggressive in Cheese early on in the series, and he failed, and it failed. It fell on its face. Zan took a 2-0 lead. Then Björn, he took a breath. There was a break in the series. He calmed down and he played more macro oriented, and he was looking very strong and very dominant in game 3 and game 4. So he brought it all the way to the ace match. Then coming into game 5, coming into Pylon, he tried to cheese again and it fell on its face. I say cheese has tried to be hyper aggressive, and in the losers interview, he himself said that he doesn't know why he did that. He was kind of like frazzled in the series, especially with how it started, and he does regret his decisions in that final game against Zaun. And he knows that, like, if he had played normal, if he had played standard, he would have been in a much better position and probably would have won that series as well. But again, did in the moments kind of decide how to play out that game, and didn't quite go his way. With that, Zaun did claim it in the end to take down Björn 3-2 to advance on to the qualifying match, where he did fall to Rainer. Rainer did eliminate Zaun. And with that, we had our final 8 players. We had several of Rainer, Maru, Cure, Hero, Solar, Clem, and Classic. And coming into this, there were certain expectations to be had. If you recall, we expected Cure to advance on. Serral versus Rainer was going to be a really close one. Historically, and I say historically, even now, Serral, his weakest matchup is ZVZ. We saw Serral struggle during DreamHack Dallas against Solar, if you remember. They also went to the ace match, with Serral barely won. And likewise here, Serral versus Rainer was also really intense, and I can very easily see a world where Rainer should have won that series. Like Raynor, he was looking dominant. He was looking really in form, and he was, I want to say, even in a winning, commanding position in every single game, even the games that he lost. The ace match is what everyone's going to be focusing on. If you missed out, I do recommend the VODs. But Raynor, he was ahead. Raynor, he had a lead. He was up 20, 30 army supply. He was moving out across map. He had a dominant start. Everything was going his way. And the cameras even cut to Cyril, and Cyril, he himself was looking distraught. Like the game was over. The game was over. He was out. Even in the interview afterwards, he himself said that he had lost that game. Like that things were not going well at all. And Raynor, he overextended. Raynor, he overextended. I say overextended. Raynor, he pushed too soon. Basically, he had this massive supply lead. He was counterattacking after Cyril kind of fumbled the ball. And Raynor, he had enough, but he attacked before his reinforcements arrived. So basically, he attacked with half his army. He got too excited. Cyril was able to take that fight as a result because Raynor, he wasn't fighting with everything, and Raynor, he lost his lead. Everything snowballed from there, and in the end, Cyril, he was able to clutch out that win in the end. And yeah, it was a crazy series. And again, even Cyril says that like he would. Even Cyril said that he was dead 100% in that game, and Raynor, he got too excited. You know, maybe nerves, maybe some inexperience. I mean, they're both very experienced players, but maybe some nerves. The fact that you're going up against, you know, one of your good teammates and friends as well, like there's a lot that comes into play, especially after, you know, a long week of StarCraft as well. But in the end, Cyril did claim that series, and Cyril went on to win the entire thing. Took down Cure 4-0, took down Classic 5-2 in the Grand Finals. Before we get too ahead into that, though, winding it back, another crazy result was Solo versus Hero, which was a very one-sided series. And this series was actually very similar to GSL Season 2 semifinals. If you watched Hero versus Rogue in the most recent GSL, it was very similar, where Rogue all in and cheesed the hell out of Hero, and Rogue knocked him the hell out. Knocked him out of GSL. Here, very similar. Solo, he went for non-stop 3-base all-ins, which is what we expected. He went non-stop aggression, non-stop all-ins. Solo was hyper aggressive in that ZVP, and the series ended really quickly, to be honest. It was a really fast series, and Hero got bopped out of the tournament. I said at the time, as we were casting it, that it felt like Hero didn't get to play StarCraft at all. Like he didn't get to showcase any of his builds or any of his play or anything. That's how it felt. That like Solo, he would just come in with a plan, with an all-in, and he was able to break Hero every game. And afterwards, Hero, he posted, I believe, on Discord. He did leave a post about it as well, and he kind of reinforced those ideas, where he himself was feeling a little bit disappointed because he spoke about how he had prepared all these builds and prepared all this play, and he felt like he didn't get to show any of it off. And I'm like, yeah, it coincides with like how our feelings as well about that series. And yeah, here he was also a little bit disappointed with that performance, considering like how well he performed in the group stage, taking down Cure, taking down Lancer, taking down Cyan. But yeah, that was, I would say, a very unsatisfying series, just because there was no back and forth. It was over real fast and real quick, and Solo, he was able to claim that series. Meanwhile, we had Classic versus Clem. This was similar. I say similar because we talk about all the time how TVP currently is very momentum based. It's very momentum based. And the early game 1, game 2, game 3, the early game went the way of Classic every single time. He was able to get a stronger start, take an economic lead. I want to say, I think it was on Pylon, where despite Classic's lead, Clem, he almost brought it back. Like Clem had some crazy, I might be thinking of Persephone actually. No, I'm thinking of Persephone, where Clem, he was having the best fights possible. He was having the juiciest EMPs. He's getting full surrounds as well. Despite Classic's lead, Clem, he was almost bringing it back. Almost, but not enough. Like Clem, he was playing out of his mind, but every game, Clem was playing from behind. Every single game. And Clem, he also reiterated and reinforced that idea in his interviews as well, how he spoke about how like he just had a really, really rough early game, and because at every game he was just struggling to keep up. And with that, we saw Classic claim the series. And again, a lot of people had some higher expectations from Clem, myself included. Classic, this is not the first time he beat Clem, of course. We spoke about it coming into the series. Classic did defeat Clem during RSL, twice in the RSL, and here as well. So again, we saw that Clem, we were curious if Clem would learn from his series in RSL, would grow from that, and would come in with a different kind of mindset, different kind of plan. He did struggle here. Did struggle here against Classic. Did get knocked out. Likewise, Classic was looking very dominant against Solar. It shows how different Hero and Classic are, where Classic was being a lot more defensive. In PvZ specifically, he was being a lot more defensive, a lot more safe, and the aggression from Solar did struggle. Like he was just ramming his face against a brick wall. We spoke about at the time. It was almost like Classic. He kind of took the mantle from Stats as like the new Shield of Fire. By like Classic, he was very defensive and very safe in his PvZ in his series against Solar. Likewise, it was the same in the previous group stage, Group B series against Serral as well. I should emphasize that Classic did defeat Serral at DreamHack Dallas with this more slower, more defensive macro style getting into the late game. That's where Classic was able to showcase like his skill, his prowess, hit his final form and look dominant. I say dominant, he was looking even greater than Serral at DreamHack Dallas. But the group stage match really told a story. If you watch those matches, and again we spoke about it at the time, Serral, he was so much more prepared against Classic. He was so much more ready for his play. And there were interviews after, sorry, not interviews. Lambo, he shed some light on this, which is, I loved that Lambo was able to be a part of the broadcast. Lambo, he actually shed some light. He mentioned how, in preparation for this tournament, Serral, he was doing a lot of custom games with Showtime. He was doing a lot of custom games with Showtime. And specifically, they were working on that specific style, where Showtime, he was emulating Classic, being more defensive and working towards the late game, working towards Skytoss, and it would be Serral who was able to kind of puncture holes in that defense, able to get a lead early on and play from ahead coming into the late game. It wasn't like Serral was out greeting Classic. No, not at all. Serral, he was going for a lot of aggression, actually. He was going for a lot of multi-prong attacks, a lot of drop play as well, making use of dropper lords, and he was breaking Classic before Classic could actually get into the late game. Or Classic would get there, but he would get there from behind because he would sustain a lot of losses. He'd lose like a mineral line. He'd lose like a mineral line with workers over the course of the early to mid game, and then Serral would come into late game ahead. He'd be having that massive like base and income advantage, and then he would not just contain Classic on 4 bases, but he would push in. He would push in and just Classic would fall apart at the seams. And it was a really eye-opening series. Really eye-opening. So again, Serral, he did learn from their previous encounter at DreamHack Dallas. He did adapt, did adjust. He was very well prepared for Classic in the group stage. And that led into their series in the finals, where coming into it, my assumption at least was Classic, he's probably not going to play that style again. Like based on how dominant Serral was in the group stage, he's probably going to cheese, and that's what we saw. Classic, he was going for a lot of glaive adepts, he was going for a lot of earlier builds. I think maybe there was one game in that series where he tried to play macro, but outside of that, like he changed his approach entirely. And Serral was ready for that. And he even had an interview afterwards. I guess we'll get into it. But he actually had an interview with the SE historian afterwards. And SE historian, shout out to the StarCraft historian. He asked him, hey, did you expect Classic to be more aggressive and be more cheesy in the finals? Serral, he was like, yep. So it's like, yeah, like after what happened in the group stage, I was 100% expecting him not to play macro, not to play standard. And yeah, Serral, he was able to shut Classic down. Serral having a really dominant performance. Again, 4-0 against Cure, 5-2 against Classic. Again, the closest series was against Raynor. And I said at the time as well as we were covering these matches, I do feel like the biggest threats to Serral in this group were going to be Raynor, Solar, and Clem. I do think that those would have been the biggest threats to him. And after Clem went down to Classic, I was like, Solar's not going to be Classic. It's not going to, like, they're not going to play against Serral. And as a result, Serral, he had a much easier time in this tournament after Raynor. And I guess I should mention as well, shout out to the SE historian, I guess we'll bring it up here, just because it goes in line with this. He did have a very brief interview with Serral afterwards. The SE historian, he was at Riyadh, he was in the crowd. You can actually see him in some of the crowd shots as well. He was there. And he did ask Serral, he straight up asked him, he was like, hey, do you have any regrets about this tournament? Like, do you regret not facing off against Clem and having a rematch in the playoffs? And Serral, he was like, I mean, I kind of regret that I didn't get to play him in the playoffs. But at the same time, if I did, it probably would have been a harder tournament. Like, so he himself, he was like, it would have been a much more difficult series if I played against Clem. And again, they never did, right? They never did. Classic took care of Clem instead. So Serral, he was a little bit thankful that had happened instead when it came to this. So, you know, like on the one hand, it would have been nice to have been him. On the other hand, it would have been a much more difficult series. So in the end, Cyril did make it through. Quickly touching on things, right? He also spoke about the expectations versus Classic, and the SE historian. He even had a brief, more fun question asking Cyril, was like, "Did you ever believe you'd be the best player in the world when you first started?" So I was like, "No, God no." But Cyril did say after his first like big Premier Tournament win, that's when he started thinking like, "Hey, like I could be the best. I could get up there. I could be the best in the world. Like I could strive for more after his first big Premier win. But before that, like he was definitely a little more humble, and he had no big expectations as to what he could achieve. But yeah, in the end, congratulations, Cyril. He is of course our world champion. He is once again he's got like what 3-4 world championships under his belt, and he does claim another. That was a little bit of a controversial, maybe I say controversial, like a weird thing about the event is I think they kept saying that he's already won like 3, and this is going to be his 4th, but like he had already won another previously, and for some reason they were like ignoring that. I know that Wax, he was on that on social media. I know that he kept tweeting at everyone. He was like, "Why are you not?" It's like why are you not counting his previous wins? Like what's going on here? Like it was kind of weird, like the narrative that was being spun. For some reason they didn't want to like count certain tournaments. I think they didn't want to count like a BlizzCon or something for some reason. I don't know why. So yeah, I don't know if there's like a rationale behind that. I don't know if they only want to count like IM Katowice's and only IM Katowice's and only EWC's and not BlizzCons because it's from a different company. Like maybe that's why. Maybe it's hard to say. It's so not too certain why they don't want to count it, but yeah, that was something weird that was happening. Meanwhile, they of course had a 3rd place match as well. This was a new format. This was something that we hadn't seen before. I can't remember the last time we had a 3rd place match in a big like world championship Premier tournament like this. Like 3rd place matches are very much so a rare sight. They're a rare sight in these big Premier events. So it was interesting to see that they brought it back. Well, that they introduced it. I should emphasize that they just straight up introduced it here. And personally, like it is really cool to delineate between 3rd and 4th place. I think there's value in that for sure. And there was like $20,000 on the line between 3rd and 2nd place. Sorry, 3rd and 4th place. So there was a lot on the line there as well. But I do know that some of the casters did feel a little bit weird about the fact that after the series, it's like, okay, well, moving on to the finals, right? Like the series had a little bit less weight behind it. Yes, there was a lot of money on the line, but it's hard to be too excited. I should say, it was hard for some of the casters to be a little bit too excited for the players, knowing that like there's nothing else for them, right? Like they're not advancing in the tournaments. Like that was the end of their run then and there. So I know that was a little bit awkward for some of the casters. But overall, like I think I'm all for it. I think I'm all for having a 3rd place match, just to delineate between the two. Kira looking very strong against Solar in that matchup as well. And yeah, with that, again, we did crown our champion. There. Oh. As Cyril, he is once again on top of this. Again, there were some things that we didn't quite get out of this tournament. Like for me myself, I would have loved to have seen Clem versus Maru. Like that's all I wanted. that's all I wanted out of this tournament was Clem versus Maru. For those that recognize our casting here on the channel, Clem with his Protoss, he has beaten every Terran player in the world except for Maru because they've never played. Like Maru and Clem, they've never played in recent in the past year. In the past year, they haven't played. In the past year, Clem, he has not been playing TVT, he's been playing PVT instead. So I would have loved to have seen Clem's Protoss against Maru's Terran, but we never got there. Unfortunately, the stars never quite aligned, and they never quite played. So it was I was a little bit unfortunate. That's what I was hoping for. If you remember, that's what I was hoping for in Star Zagora, but Maru cancelled his trip to Star Zagora. So my next hope was EWC. Didn't quite get it there. And yeah, outside of that, of course, right, Hero was very bittersweet hearing from him, or just very, very bitter even. And again, he did kind of speak on that as well, talking about those expectations. And yeah, with that, Cyril, he's going to be our world champion for 2025. Now, the likelihood of there being another world championship after this, that is a little bit more up in the air. From my understanding, at least from a lot of the talent that was there, they did not have expectations. I believe they were under the assumption that this was going to be the final one. I always believed that there was always a chance for more, just because even though there's no circuits, and I know that ESL, they were fighting for a circuit, they were trying to negotiate for a circuit, they failed to do so. That's why there's no esports. So that's why there's no ESL Pro Tour, right? That there is no circuit. They tried, they fought for it, they tried to negotiate, they failed to do so. So that, of course, we knew was off the table, but there was always a chance that this still might be an annual thing. Even though there wouldn't be a circuit, StarCraft 2 may still be at the Esports World Cup on an annual basis. It's not ideal, everyone would prefer a circuit alongside it, but this still might be an annual event. From my understanding, a lot of the talent actually didn't really have a lot of faith in that, just because of things that they were hearing behind the scenes. But after this event, because the viewership did so well, specifically I believe it's because of the viewership, and because it was doing so well on Twitch, the higher ups at EWC, some of the decision makers, they were actually pleasantly surprised. They were like, oh, like this is one pretty good. Okay. That's interesting, and from my understanding now, the view on StarCraft possibly being returning to 2026 for EWC is a lot higher. They're looking at it a little bit more favorably because of the numbers. At the end of the day, that's all they care about. All they care about is the numbers, is the viewership, is how much attention is this getting, is this garnering EWC. So because the viewership was really, really good, that does bode well for StarCraft 2 coming into 2026. Again, specifically as an annual event, not for a circuit. Like I want to make sure that I delineate between the two. Just because StarCraft 2 may be at the Esports World Cup in 2026 doesn't mean that there's going to be like a consistent, like, I don't know, like an IEM Krakow or another DreamHack Dallas or DreamHack Atlanta or anything like that. So that's just to make that clear. How they construct, the players that qualify for the events, that's yet to be determined. if it goes through, and if there is going to be StarCraft 2 next year, I guess we'll find that out next year, I suppose. As I guess this also marks the beginning of the off season of StarCraft 2, and I do want to kind of phrase in that way. This is kind of the beginning of the off season. Likewise, when it comes to the keys, I didn't get to mention that, but as always, the Esports World Cup champion, it does decide 3 keys that they get to add to their trophy and add to like their kind of emblem and the totem that they do hold. And typically it's the players, historically, at least what Clem did last year, is it was the players that he beat along the way in the playoffs. But Cyril, he chose not to add Raynor because they're good friends, right? Like Cyril and Raynor, they're good friends, and out of respect for Raynor, Cyril, he chose not to add him to his totem, not to add him to his trophy. Instead, he actually added Gabe because he was the only other player. Cyril, it was a classic. He beat Classic, of course, in the finals. He beat Cure in the semis. He beat Raynor in the quarterfinals, and in the group stage, he only beat Gabe because he also beat and played Classic there as well. So there were only ever 4 players, and he had to pick 3. So it's like, if he's not going to pick Raynor, he's going to pick Hero Marine. He's going to pick Gabe. Now, something that we found out afterwards, after the fact, he was told this, and we all believe this as well, that Cyril could only pick players that he beat in this tournament. But apparently, something we found out after the fact was there was miscommunication, and technically, something that other esports have been doing, the other esports at EWC, that they're allowed to do, and that, again, this was miscommunication to Cyril into the production at StarCraft 2, is that he can actually pick anyone. If he wanted to, he could have picked Clem. He could have picked Maru. He actually had the ability to pick any player at the event to add to the trophy, but he just wasn't told that. And neither were we, right? Like, as the audience and as the StarCraft 2 production team, it was only after the fact that they were told. It was like, like if Sarah wanted to, could have added some other people as well. So that's a bit of a fun fact, I suppose, for things that happened here, and unfortunately some miscommunication. But I guess, again, if there is going to be another Esports World Cup next year with StarCraft 2, I guess we'd know for that one at least. That would be the hope. Likewise, we also heard from Classic. There was some posts made from Gay, from Classic, all on social medias as well regarding the overall event. It wasn't just that the Twitch stream was providing the Twitch drops for StarCraft 2 for commanders, but it was also promoted on the launcher of StarCraft 2 as well. I said launcher of StarCraft 2. The Blizzard, the BattleNet app, the application, the launcher, was also showcasing and advertising the EWC event, which also I'm sure did help when it came to the overall viewership. So there's a lot that kind of went well in regards to promotion and in regards to marketing to make sure that as many eyes were on this event as possible, and it paid off. It paid off despite the days and the time slot of the tournament, which, as we reiterated previously, like, we're working against it. Despite that, still really good viewership, still really good eyes on the event as well, and yeah, it was. I would say I think the consensus is it was quite successful. Quite successful. When it comes to the matches themselves, again, as I mentioned before, personally, at least for me, after covering it all, of course we didn't get to see the B stream matches. But again, Raynor's matches, Raynor versus Serral, Raynor versus Maru, they were the most, at least in my eyes, like, interesting and exciting and hype and back and forth. Again, Serral versus Cure was more one-sided. Serral versus Classic, more one-sided. Classic versus Solo was more one-sided. Cure versus Solo was more one-sided. Unfortunately, a lot of these other matches were straight up just more one-sided and more dominant than the others. I guess something that I should reiterate: Cure versus Maru. That was actually a lot more intense. I know the series scoreline is 3-1, but a lot of those games are really back and forth as well, and really intense as well. So I do want to give credit to that series. And again, even Clem versus Classic, we mentioned how, like, the games were a little bit more back and forth than Hero versus Solar, for example. But, like, it was still Clem playing from behind for a lot of them. But still some good matches involved there, for sure. But yeah, unfortunately, a lot of these games did feel a little bit more one-sided that we would have liked to have been for the playoffs specifically, for those playoffs. And yeah, outside of that, again, shout out to the SE historian for being there. I should also emphasize he did have an interview with Serral. I believe he has more interviews. I believe more interviews were conducted. They have not been released yet. I believe he's in the process of editing them and soon to be uploading them as well. We don't know who he interviewed, but we can imagine a lot of these top players. Maybe he didn't have access to a translator. I don't know if Maddox was too available. It'd be really cool if he was, and if they were able to work together. But chances are that he most likely got to interview, some of the other foreigners, like a Lambo, like a Raynor, a Showtime, a Big Gabe as well. That's kind of who we're expecting. Fingers crossed that maybe he was able to find a translator and have Maddox and then interview some of the Koreans. But we can at least expect some interviews with some of the foreigners at EWC. So do check that out. Do tune in and follow the SE historian for those interviews, because they'll be coming soon. Of course, with the Esports World Cup wrapping up, that leads us into the Fusion Esports League, the FEL. This was crazy, by the way. This was 2 days later. 2 days after EWC, bam, FEL, the Fusion Esports League. No time to rest whatsoever. We had players flying from Riyadh all the way to Poland just to compete. And fun fact, unfortunately, there were some delays. There were some unfortunate delays and unfortunate flight rescheduling. And because of that, the players were meant to arrive a lot sooner. They actually arrived as the tournament was beginning. The tournament was starting, and we were being notified, like, yo, Clem just arrived at the airport. Like, we got to go pick him up. It's like, Jesus. So it was a very tight schedule, very tight, because that the players were a little bit more jet lagged, a little bit more tired from the trip, from the travel, and just to jump straight into competing as well. Crazy schedule there. But they pulled it off. So shout out to Lambo, Raynor, and Clem for traveling and for going straight from one tournament straight into another. Insane. Right off the plane. God. So yes, we did have the Fusion Esports League. Of course, we were one of the English casters for that. I know that Wardy joined a little bit later, and I believe Rotterdam was there from almost the beginning, or from the beginning as well. So we did have a couple of different streams covering the event. And with that, we had a pretty amazing tournament here. Again, we went over all the qualifiers previously because we were covering the qualifiers to determine who would make it through the Polish Championship as well. And again, this was a big offline event happening in Krakow. And from my understanding, this is the first of many. If you remember, we were discussing Geralt's interview at DreamHack Dallas, and how he spoke, and he's the main organizer, one of the main organizers of this tournament, and he spoke about how he had ambitions to make this event annually, to host this event annually, to grow it over the years, to grow it over time, to host this event in Krakow, to help grow esports in the local scene and local area in Poland, and of course include other esports as well, to include FIFA, to include Street Fighter. No, sorry, it wasn't. I think it was Tekken, not Street Fighter. But I believe other games were involved during the course of this event, not just StarCraft 2, but others. Again, there's a little bit more ambition there, some grander ideas from Geralt, and from my understanding, there's a lot of excitement, a lot of support for that sort of thing as well. So yeah, really cool to see. Again, the event itself was very long. I will say that. I think the VOD stream is like 14 hours. Like it's it was
14 hours, 8 minutes or something like that.
There you go. There you go. 14 hours and 8 minutes. It was back to what we're used to. Like I was like laying back and chilling with the 8-hour EWC streams. I'm like, this is nothing. Like this is can we cook up some replays and then do some more casting after EWC? Meanwhile for FEL, like this is some casting, Bobby. 14 hours. Let's go. I was very tired at the end. I was straight up. I think for the lower bracket finals of this tournament, I'm pretty sure I was nodding off a little bit. I was doing these ones like in mid game as well. Like I had to back off, I had to do some squats, I had to just try to get some energy for the final matches because it was intense.
My favorite part was that apparently when Clem had a break between matches, he actually did go to have a nap, like on the backstage. Like he
right.
could
Like
not.
Yeah, you could tell like the players themselves were also very fatigued. Like again, to go from Riyadh to take a flight to then go straight to the event as well, for the event to be 14 hours, like you could tell like the players, even the casters, like everyone was fatigued, everyone was tired coming into it.
So in their defense, I just want to say that originally the event apparently was planned to be a 2-day event, but because the schedule got so tight, they had to squeeze it into just Sunday.
Mm-hmm. So, there you go. There was just again the schedule. There was just so much happening. When it comes to the event itself, I will say that especially for the finals, you could tell that they were tired. You can tell that they were fatigued. Like there were mistakes being made, and they were playing a little bit more sluggishly. Like that, it was noticeable for sure. It was noticeable. I will say that despite that, it was a really fun event. Really cool to see the crowd as well, and everyone coming together again. The Polish, when it comes to Polish events, like I think it helps that they've already had a lot of offline events in the lead up to this. Like so, there's already a scene. There are already people that are used to going to offline events for this and meeting up with others. I'm referring to the House Galactic Battle. I'm referring to the esports events before that as well. So there's already been like these semi-regular tournaments for people, for fans, for viewers to go to and to come together. So I am Katowice, of course, as well on an annual basis, at least prior to this year. So that's like been a regular thing. This is another big offline event happening, especially because we know that there's not going to be any more I Am Katowices, and there's a bit of a lower chance that there's going to be, we know that I Am Krakow is going to be a thing, but we don't know if StarCraft is going to be at I Am Krakow. So this is a really nice way to still have StarCraft in Poland on a regular basis, even if it isn't associated with ESL and with IEM.
Also, speaking of the Polish crowd, I want to give a quick shout out to the Infolet people. They're one of the main sponsors of the event, and they had their own like booth where they invited players for like signing sessions, and they also had like quizzes about StarCraft, about like StarCraft units and stuff. And I talked to some of their staff at the booth, and they said that they were like, because the prizes were like like a mouse mat or something, like they had like some kids coming over and like trying to do the quizzes and failing, and like, we're gonna come next time, we're gonna get it, and like kinda in that way they are slowly getting them into the game because they are learning about the game. And I mean, maybe they will start playing eventually, we will see. So that was a cute initiative.
Yeah, I guess something that I didn't quite emphasize is that the FEL is like I guess it isn't just the esport event itself, but it's a bit of a convention. You have other like stalls and other things happening around it as well, that do draw people in.
The FEL is the tournament itself, and the convention it's happening at is the Steelworks game fest, I think.
Yeah, they were listed as one of the main sponsors. With that, so again, it was a really fun tournament. Again, it was a very, very long, very fatigued. We had Clem making it all the way to the bracket finals. Rainer, honestly, looking really good in those bracket finals. Like Rainer, that was the 3-0. There's some series where we see a 3-0 and have to like emphasize like, hey, it looks like it's a 3-0, but if you watch the games themselves, they're actually really close, really intense, and the scoreline doesn't reflect how close the series actually was. For here, the scoreline does reflect how close the series was, because it was not close. Rainer, he 3-0'd Clem in a very clean, very confident, very dominant fashion. I think even in the interview after, I don't know if you remember, but he was asked like, hey, like you like looked really good in that previous series, like how confident are you coming in? And Rainer, he was like, yeah, that series was fucking easy, like but he stopped himself. Like he was about to swear, and then he stopped himself, and and he was like, it was hecky. He
tried like 2 different swear words before he just like gave up mid-sentence.
Well, like again, he was stopping himself. He was censoring himself. Then he went on like pretty easy or something. Like he found a word to use, but he was struggling to find a word that was suitable for a broadcast. But I think he said freaking easy, I think, in the end. But yeah, with that, so again, like it was a really strong performance. But then we had the rematch. Clem, he took down Lambo 3-0, and then Clem, he had that rematch again. Like it was a very sluggish series. I mean, even as Kura said, something I didn't even know. Apparently, Clem, he had a nap in between, games, just because again, it was like everyone was tired, everyone was sluggish.
I'm pretty sure that was before the nap, and then for like the next match, he came after the nap or something like that.
Yeah.
I don't remember, but like I remember that being mentioned on stage.
Yeah, so again, like Clem and Rainer, like it was not the cleanest best of 7 between them, but a lot of fun nonetheless. And in the end, Clem did claim the series 4-3, went all the way to the ace match, and did take it. I just say that just because if you watch the VODs, you might not see the most clean play out there between Clem and Rainer, just because everyone was just running on fumes.
I will say though, I for one enjoyed the finals because it involved a lot of proxy hatching.
Yeah. Again, there was a lot of cheese, a lot of proxy hatching. There was a lot of shenanigans going on. Likewise, we also had, I kind of glossed over it. I spoke about how, Clem, Rainer, Lambo, they traveled from Riyadh. They traveled from EWC straight to this tournament. Meanwhile, we had some other international representation that did arrive as well, not from Riyadh, but also still competed. Players like Skillus, SOS, so we had a Korean player as well, and we had Uwu Thermal also traveling, also competing. So there was a lot of variety when it came to the amount of play that we had. Euthermal, of course, cooking out with some crazy builds that had some mixed results. SOS, it was great to see Art showcase his own Korean as Art was translating. Again, Art spent a lot of time in Korea, so I'd never heard his Korean, didn't know how good it was. It was pretty good, and he was, there as like the impromptu translator for SOS. Likewise, Skillus Nikita, he was also there looking quite strong himself. I mean, Nikita, he went all the way to, he took a map off of Clem, of course, and he went all the way to the ace match against Lambo as well. So Skillus, he had his own strong showing. Don't want to overshadow his results and his showing in this tournament as well. So in the end, congratulations. Clem did win the Fusion Esports League 2025, and we most likely are looking to have one in the future. We had the vice president of Krakow actually handing the trophy, handing the award to Clem, but also in his own speech, he also did re-emphasize that, talking about how they're happy with the event, and then they do plan on hosting more like in the future as well. That could have just been lip service just to be nice, or maybe not, hard to say. But again, we know that at least Geralt has plans on making this more of a regular thing and hosting this event on a regular basis.
Yeah, what I can say is that on the official profile of the city, they did mention that they want to invest into esports as a city, but like it's not specific, because we have IEM Krakow, as we said, so like that probably is part of it. But they also said they are thinking about the smaller stuff, so that would include stuff like FEL. So they are looking into investing into esports, is what I would say.
There you go. Which I'm sure is also a part of why I am Katowice is no longer I am Katowice, but I am Krakow. Like I'm sure that's also a reason for that. There might have been like even like a bidding war or something for to just to host the event in a different city. But yeah, so with that, congratulations to Clem, and a shout out to all those working behind the scenes. I saw Kashim in the chat. I saw Kashim in the chat as well. Kashim, of course, was the main admin for the event and making sure that everything was running smoothly and nothing was catching fire as well. So really cool to see everyone coming together to make this happen, to make this work. I know a lot of work was put in behind the scenes, and best of luck to the team moving forward for the next Fusion Esports League.
Also, I want to give a second shout out to Kashim because he also came straight for Riyadh and then admin the entire event on his own for 14 hours.
True.
He's also crazy.
Este Kashim, papi, este Kashim. But yeah, so with that, that leads us into our next bit of news here. And we're going to double back on some of the talking points that we had previously. Bear that in mind at some point during this. But the next bit of news here is Fear Dragon. Again, Fear Dragon, he has been gone from StarCraft for quite some time. I think he had a stream before EWC, and he even spoke about it. He spoke about how like he, for the most part, intended to just quietly exit the scene, I mean, we all know that Fear Dragon, he's a little bit doomer. He's at times his self-esteem isn't always there. But, even though we all love him, we all love Ravi. You know, he's very down to earth. He's very grassroots. So we all have fun things to say and to speak of when it comes to Ravi. But he himself, you know, doesn't have the biggest self-esteem, and he always talks himself down. He had a stream before EWC talking about how, like, you know, he had intended to like slowly step away, and he wasn't really casting anything anymore. He wasn't covering StarCraft anymore. He was working full time in a different field, of course. And he was investing time in other things. You know, if you check out his social media, he's been learning how to play the guitar. He's been doing woodworking as well. Like, he was talking about how he has like a bucket list of things that he wants to learn to do, and he wants to do as well. Yeah, because of that, he was, yeah, very inactive in StarCraft. But Esports World Cup, now that he stepped back into the ring, now that he started casting a little bit again for the B stream and interacting with all things StarCraft as well, looks like he's been motivated. He's been motivated to step in even further. He's like, you know what? I remember why I love StarCraft. And he did post about the return of Ladder Heroes. Now, for those that don't remember, Ladder Heroes was an initiative that was made by Ravi many years ago to incentivize ladder play. Basically, he would have standings. You'd have to sign up. You'd have to register your StarCraft 2 account, and every week, I think it was either weekly or every 2 weeks. I think it was every week even, or maybe even every month. But on a regular basis, he would check the ladder, he would check the registered players, and based on their ladder rankings, based on the top players on, say, the NA ladder or the EU ladder, they would earn prize money. It wouldn't be a tournament, it's just he would keep track of them on the ladder, and the more that they played, the higher that they placed, the more money they would earn, just because, you know, they'd be ranked compared to each other. So it was an initiative to push players to actually ladder, to actually compete, and to actually, you know, foster and to actually have the StarCraft 2 ladder be alive in some way, especially the NA ladder. Like, the NA ladder is very inactive. It's very inactive at the pro level. Unfortunately, because of its inactivity, even the top players from the Americas, it's like, well, no one's laddering, no one's playing here. Like, why bother? Let's just ladder on EU. Even with a ping disadvantage, you get games. You get better practice laddering on EU. So like the NA server is pretty dead. It's pretty dead, unfortunately. So again, like something like the NA Ladder Heroes is a really good way to actually bring players in, to bring players not just from the Americas, but from Europe and from Korea as well, and give them a reason to actually play on the ladder, actually compete. And as a result, it benefits everyone, because now you get some better quality practice. Even if you're not a part of the Ladder Heroes, suddenly you're laddering and you're Estrella, you're Trigger, you're Scarlet, you're Juanito, or maybe even you're some of the more mid-tier GMs and pro players like a Tavito or a Draconix or a Sagan or a Cristianox. And suddenly, hey, you get to actually ladder against some better players, and that helps you improve, that helps you excel, that gives you that drive to strive for a little bit more. So it's just a really good ladder incentive. And it, again, Ravi's been out of StarCraft for a long time, but now, he's looking to reboot. He's looking to bring it back. I think he went into a little bit finer detail regarding it. He's hoping to find a sponsor. He's hoping to find a sponsor to help run the events in multiple regions.
I just want to say that as I was looking at the tweet, because he is looking for sponsors, and I see Pascal, the owner of StreamerZone, responding to that tweet, and I'm like,
Yeah, that's an obvious one.
Yeah.
Yes, and we all know the StreamerZone have been investing quite a lot into StarCraft, which is a good thing and maybe a negative thing as well. Like it's one of those things where if you have one big sponsor doing everything, if they ever leave, then we get left with nothing. That's the one concerning thing about that. But yes, StreamerZone, they did show some interest in potentially sponsoring Fear Dragon's ladder heroes. But going into it, he says here that if there are if he doesn't find any sponsors, then he'd do North America, he'd do the NA ladder hero. If they do find sponsors, then he's willing to do the EU ladder heroes and potentially Korean ladder heroes as well. But his priority is the NA ladder heroes, which again makes the most sense because the NA ladder is the one that needs the most help. It needs the most help. It needs the most support. It needs the most incentive to actually play on the NA ladder, more so than the European and Korean ladder. So again, he has his priorities in order, and we'll see what comes of it. Again, I mean, we know that at least it's coming back in some way. Whether it comes back from multiple regions and in what capacity, we will soon find out. We'll soon find out. So really cool to hear from Ravi from Fear Dragon. Oh, really cool to hear. Likewise, I also did want to mention as well, I guess, alongside all of this, is that during said stream when he was discussing, EWC and going over things, we did get, I guess, official confirmation as well that the SE2 Safe House is going to be returning later on in 2025, this year. For those who don't know, the StarCraft 2 Safe House is an event that was broadcast and was brought together last year by Zombie Grub, almost like a NA Home Story Cup. I say almost. They were able to raise funds and they were able to come together, bring all the casters together. I think it was Zombie Grub, I want to say Nathanias, Steadfast, Chicken Man, Zerg Girl, Fear Dragon, and maybe one other that I'm not quite remembering, and Zombie Grub of course as well. And they all rented an Airbnb. Basically, they rented a safe house together, and they ran a tournament. The players were all the tournament was online. The players were all online. They were all playing from elsewhere. It was all North American and Latin American players. So we had players like Eggs, we had players like Cham, we had Estrella, Trigger, Future. Players from the Americas competing in this tournament, and again they were casting from that venue, from that Airbnb, and also they were making other content as well. I think they had like after hours like poker, and they were doing drinking games, and they were doing like a mukbang, and again like doing other content together, and then trying to foster that kind of vibe and foster that kind of like Home Story Cup-esque tournament. Obviously not as large, not as big, but the hope is, especially if it's able to, if they do run it on a regular basis, or at least beginning to be on an annual basis, they're able to help grow it, right? You all start from somewhere. And bringing together all the casters is one thing. Ideally, to maybe even grow it to have like a bit of a bigger venue and actually have it available for other people to come and to watch and to be a part in as well, to have it open to the public. That would be the ideal as well. And also flying over players, I mean, that's maybe a ways away. The biggest issue, of course, we spoke about this, I want to say like maybe 2 editions ago. Ravi actually spoke about this, and we reinforced this idea, how unfortunately StarCraft's a lot of the StarCraft scene and even the NA scene, they were maybe a little bit spoiled in a certain way, and there was no initiative and there was no setup. There was no grassroots setup for their own tournaments, right? Like right now at least there's no Home Story Cup equivalent in NA, right? Like no one took the initiative early on to start running events in North America, especially back when there was actually a North American scene, to run these more local events. I mean, I would say that Cheeseadelphia is the closest thing to it. If you remember, we spoke about it at the time, how we need more of the NA casters and more of the NA kind of creators to actually promote Cheeseadelphia, to have that be the event to go to. Shout out to Joe and those working behind the scenes at Cheeseadelphia. But like that still has to be fostered, that still has to be grown, and it's lagging a little bit behind compared to what Home Story Cup is. But you got to start from somewhere, right? You got to start from somewhere, and again, the SSU Safe House will help with that. Cheesedelphia also, they have been slowly growing, and they also had a really solid previous Cheesedelphia as well. I know they want to run another one. So, as always, we all wish them the best of luck when it comes to the SE2 Safe House, when it comes to Cheese, when it comes to the NA Ladder Heroes. Again, when it comes to a lot of StarCraft, when it comes to the future of StarCraft, it is in our hands. It's in our hands, whether it's in the hands of, us doing our part, the CranKy Ducklings, Thermal, Ravi, and everyone else. We all got to do our parts, and really cool to see Ravi stepping up and doing his part as well for the NA Ladder. It all helps. It all does help. Speaking of the future of StarCraft 2 and speaking of the future of the scene, GSL, they did send out a feedback email survey. They sent out a bit of an email, a survey to all the patrons on the GSL Patreon asking for feedback about future GSLs. Now, I actually received it as well, actually. I also got the email. It's like, we'd love your feedback on GSL. Hello, this is GSL. Thanks to support, 2025 GSL Season 1 and 2 have successfully concluded. We would like to hear your opinions to further improve GSL. What aspects of GSL would you like to see improved? Additional GSL-related content, additional adding GSL-related merchandise for crowdfunding rewards. Interesting. Additional tournament schedules. If you have any other suggestions, please leave a comment. So again, this email was sent to all the supporters and backers on Patreon, because again, GSL, they have their own Patreon, and this is a sign of things to come, right? It's like this doesn't look like an automated email, right? It doesn't look like just because it specifically mentions 2025 Season 1 and Season 2, it also mentions something more interesting to me, is ways for them to make more money and to actually be self-sufficient, right? The idea of adding GSL merchandise. If you remember, they had like a brief, like one-off thing recently where they were selling GSL pins, like old GSL pins. Like, that's exciting, right? Like some legacy merchandise of GSL typically hasn't really been accessible to the international scene. Even the pins, I think they were only selling them to Koreans. Like, they were only selling them locally. They were not selling them internationally, if I remember correctly. Because I remember we floated the idea of maybe Kronos getting us some. I don't think we ever went through with it, but yeah, like whether it comes to GSL badges, GSL pins, there's a lot of potential. We speak about this all the time. Like, this is why I wish Yaku was here. We spoke about the failings of certain aspects in the history of StarCraft in regards to Korean StarCraft as well, in regards to being able to self-monetize and actually make money and actually, sell a product and be self-sufficient. One of them also being merchandise, right? And that's something that GSL never really got around to. And, hey, if you want to, try to make a profit and actually have a reason to continue to run something, that helps, right? So I do like the idea of them moving in that direction, to allowing the scene and the viewers and the audience giving them a way to support GSL, giving not just the Patreon, but also maybe a little bit more than that, to keep it going, to keep it running. So really cool to see this email sent out. Also gives people hope for things to come, right? This does give a sign of, hey, we potentially GSL is going to continue, because we didn't know that, right? We don't know. Right now the future of StarCraft is a little bit more shrouded in mystery here. And I mentioned before that, like, a lot of it comes down to us, a lot of it comes down to stuff like this as well. So yeah, if you have any feedback, if you have any ideas for a GSL, then, and if you receive the email, I should emphasize, then of course you can respond, you can share this, and yeah, I mean, your responses might come into play, might be considered coming into the future of GSL as well. So definitely I'm looking forward to that. And yeah, it's definitely a positive sign, a positive note for the future of Korean StarCraft at least, and the future of another tournament continuing to run as well. Again, we spoke about the end of the EPT circuit, but there are still other tournaments like EPIC.LAN, like Cheesedelphia, like GSL, right? These regional tournaments are going to be that much more important moving forward. FEL as well, of course, and Home Story Cup. So again, really cool to see, and again, really it just does give a lot of hope for things to come when it comes to the Global StarCraft League. Likewise, that leads us into the Maestros of the game announcement. Okay, This I was a little bit less familiar with, but oh, right, of course. If I recall correctly, this is going to be a big offline event happening in France. This was crowdfunded insanely quickly, from my understanding.
I just want to point out, when it was when I first learned about it, so that was like over a week ago. The plan was to have 10k euro prize pool with 4 players going to Paris. So I assume that's like playoffs players and 250 people in the audience. That's the original plan. I don't know if the plan has changed since then, because obviously as they're reaching the next stretch goals, like that may change, but that was the original plan.
Yeah, that was the original plan, and again, they do have like a crowdfunding page. Currently, they have raised 31,000 euros here out of the current 35k goal. So they're almost at their next stretch goal. And as we just mentioned, like they originally had a little bit of a more a bit of a smaller stretch goal in mind, but they reached that, they exceeded that, and they have kept on going. So again, there's a big crowdfunding initiative for a big event happening in France. It is being run by Comeback TV, so already you know the people behind it are passionate about the game. These, of course, are those the remnants of O Gaming. Of course, O Gaming, they did dissolve as a company. O Gaming is no longer a thing. But of course, we had Comeback TV rise in its place, casting everything they can in French, of course, creating content, and now soon to be running tournaments as well. One of the biggest things, like, it was so sad what happened with O Gaming. It was so frustratingly, it was just frustrating. But because we lost O Gaming, that also meant that was the end of Nation Wars, right? Nation Wars was an annual event that was happening, which even had its own offline portions as well. But with the death of O Gaming, that was the death of the Nation Wars as well. Comeback TV, they've been slowly, growing once again and regaining what they have lost. And for them to take the initiative to run an event in France and for it to get this much support as well, I want to say that a lot of the initial support came from the French community more than anything before the international scene kind of stepped in as well. So really cool to see the support here, and I hope, and once again, this is a sign of things to come, of potentially another annual offline tournament, this one happening in France. So again, we'd have like Homestory Cup in Germany, we have FEL in Poland, we have this event in France as well. Definitely does bode well. Really cool to see that they are limiting themselves in a way, right, that we spoke about how they do plan on having their online portion and then the offline finals. That would be the way to go. And again, they've gotten a lot of support. I'm hoping that, my hope at least, is that they save some of this money that they're raising for the next edition, assuming they even want to, but I would hope that they do, and to invest in and to look towards future endeavors and future tournaments. But regardless, really cool to see the support here for Maestros of the game, and really cool to see that there is going to be another big offline tournament happening in France. Let's go. Let us go. So again, really cool to see all the support coming in, and all the tournaments that are rising up and that are all coming together as well. Really cool. And of course, big shout out to all those working in Comeback TV, to Funka, to I said Coca, to Funka, to Coca, to TKL as well. So much love. They're all very passionate about the game, and they all invest and devote so much time to StarCraft as well, and of course to their own channel. So really cool to see, and wishing them the best of luck. That leads us into the ZeroSpace Showmatch. ZeroSpace, they have been, I believe they're right around the corner when it comes to releasing and going live. Like they've had their demos, they've been showcasing their demos as well. And in a lead up to that, we actually had a showmatch featuring some StarCraft 2 players, featuring Pig, Winter, Loco, Lucifron, Hearthstone, Scarlet, Vortex, BCQD, Nurtio, Laser, Cat, and Neuro. So again, reason why we're bringing it up, not just because it's RTS, but also because, hey, every player that I just mentioned is related to StarCraft in some way. they're all streamers, ex-pro gamers, content creators, current casters, like they're all related to StarCraft in some way, and they all did compete in a series of show matches over on Scarlet's channel. I believe there's only limited information in regards to the results and what occurred outside of watching the VODs themselves, but regardless, really cool to see them host this showmatch. And again, ZeroSpace is looking close to completion, at least more so than some of the other RTSs out there. You know, it feels bad, man, when it comes to Battle Aces and how that is no longer going to come to fruition. Likewise, Stormgate, they stumbled out the gates and they're slowly recovering. From my understanding, like Stormgate, they'll be getting more patches. They have a more realistic kind of stretch goal setup as well, and they're also kind of working through their own, you know, trials and tribulations, and they're getting there as well. And yeah, ZeroSpace, they feel like they're on their way.
Stargate is supposed to be releasing, coming out of early access, because this is not 1.0 release, August 5th, I believe.
Yes. We didn't mention that, but that is a little bit controversial when it comes to Stormgate, because they're coming out of early access, but they're not releasing the game in full, if that makes any sense. Technically they will no longer have the early access tag, but it won't be like 1.0 release. Like they are delineating between the two in regards to Stormgate. But again, ZeroSpace, like they are definitely working their way through. Like it feels like they're, you know, working their way through their production process, the development process even.
I want to use this moment also to mention that Liquipedia has launched a new way to launch new wikis. Basically, there's something called the Liquipedia Lab, where people can start editing wikis. So later on, if they gain enough traction, they can be turned into their own projects. I mentioned that because ZeroSpace doesn't have one yet. Like, I literally just started it just so it's there, and you know, if anybody wants to help keep this going, so showmatches like this can be documented in case, you know, it does grow into a proper esports scene, then feel free to help out. Check out the Wikipedia.
There you go. Do check out the Wikipedia. As that leads us into the final big piece of news. We were actually going to be going over this 2 weeks ago during the last podcast, but at the time, if you remember, we had to cast OC King of the Hill, so we were on a limited time. We just didn't have a lot of time to go over the entirety of the balance changes or the proposed balance changes. But for those that are curious, we do have Pig. This was 3 weeks ago now, so again, we're a little bit late, to this discussion, but it is still relevant. It's still very much so relevant to the current scene and the current state of StarCraft 2. Pig did propose some balance changes. Not just that, but this does kind of spark the conversation about the future of StarCraft and the upcoming balance changes as well. This is a really important time, just because, from my understanding, especially with ESL stepping away, with ESL no longer being in charge of the future of StarCraft 2, that does kind of create this hole in regards to certain updates to the game, balance patches, and ladder map pools as well. Now, shout out to Team Liquid, shout out to TL specifically, shout out to Wax Angel, shout out to those working behind the scenes at the Team Liquid map contest, but they did step into that role very, very nicely, very swiftly as well when it comes to creating a new map pool, getting in touch with Blizzard, and uploading that map pool as well. It was very nicely done, and we have another upcoming Team Liquid map contest coming up towards the end of the year. So there's going to be another map pool. There's going to be more changes. Again, they've kind of slid into that role really, really nicely. But of course, something that we spoke about when that was happening was, what about balance changes? What about patches? Again, we do need to kind of like come together and have an idea of what to push forward. And the reason for this as well, because of ESL stepping away from that role, that also means that the Balance Council no longer has that kind of direction. I believe that, I guess technically, like, the Discord, I think, is still there, and the Balance Council and the members are still there, but now there's no ESL driving force pushing them to be like, hey, like, we want to push a patch out, you know, before or post EWC, you know, we need your ideas. We need you to come up with something to piece together so we can push a patch through, to send it to Blizzard, to send it to the internet, of course, to push it live and to make that a reality. Now that's no longer there. I believe we still have contacts, we still have connection with Blizzard. I believe that is still there, but now, like, there's a little bit less organization from that kind of side of things, from ESL, from that council. So now you could argue that that's a little bit more up in the air, and someone has to take charge. Someone has to kind of direct and kind of, I think direct is maybe the best word to use here. Direct the conversation and push the conversation forward and actually come together to actually have something to propose to bring to the table to Blizzard when eventually that does happen, when eventually a patch is going to be pushed through. So shout out to Pig. I think he spoke about it. He spoke about how like he had no intention, but like he feels like someone has to do it, so he took the initiative to step on forward to start the conversation, to publish this proposed balance patch. And again, he was very transparent, saying that like, hey, like this is like the first draft, like I fully intend to gain as much feedback as possible to change this as well, and that hopefully everyone can come together and can agree on certain directions and certain changes to be made to the game, and there can be like kind of like a cohesive, like unifying force to kind of push this forward. I think this is really important. I think this is really important as a concept. When it comes to the execution, I mean, we'll see. We shall see. Overall, when it comes to the stated goals, I mean, again, the video is available. I'm sure many people have already seen it by now. Again, it was posted 3 weeks ago. The document is also publicly available as well, so you can go over said proposed changes. And again, this is just the first draft. I believe Pig, especially because, you know, we spoke earlier how he's now a father, now he's starting a family, has not been able to go back to this and revise this, but I'm sure that's going to be coming up in the future once things die down a little bit when it comes to his IRL commitments. But I'm sure that's going to be coming. I'm sure that's going to be happening. And when it comes to the overall patch proposal, we're not going to go over it line by line. I feel like many people have already done that. I think when it comes to broad strokes here, I can get behind a lot of the key goals. He's pushing for something that I feel like certain people have been pushing for a long time. I know that Total Biscuit was very vocal about the idea of buffing, not nerfing, right? So if there's an issue in the game, if something like if Araxes, for example, Araxes have been very prominent in the meta as of late, and it's been very difficult for Zerg players to defend and to survive. I mean, hey, look at Marverse, look at GSL, right? Look at GSL, sorry, look at DreamHack Dallas. Finals of DreamHack Dallas is a good example of that. Mara versus Solar. And the idea of approaching that problem, and instead of nerfing Terran and nerfing the strength of an 8-Rax, instead kind of buffing Zerg tools instead to help combat that, to kind of bring them up to the level that they're kind of facing off against, instead of bringing down the Terran instead, right? And again, like a lot of people have been very vocal about that. I think the problem with that concept and that kind of approach is that pro gamers are very much so against that. And that was the problem with the Balance Council, is that it was mainly full of pro gamers, and a lot of them are a lot more they have a different approach. They just have a different approach in terms of balance, in terms of game design. So when they do approach these kind of issues, more often than not, they would be to kind of bring down some of the other races, would be to nerf and to take away instead of adding. It's always easier to kind of do that as well, to try to take away the strength and the power of certain units instead of buffing others. On top of that, I mean, this gets into some of the reactions to this. The Balance Council, another big problem with it was that you'd get a lot of voices from other sides, and because that, it would be quite difficult to actually push any meaningful change. Whenever something would be brought up, there'd always be a little pushback, and you'd have to, again, this is where politics gets involved, where you have to try to mediate and try to compromise and try to make sure that everyone is happy with what's happening with certain changes, with certain races. And because that, the changes that would be pushed forward would be slow increments instead of anything too big or anything too major. Which, I mean, there's pros and cons to that. But right now, because of the state of StarCraft and because there are no big game designers that are working on this, that are pushing forward any kind of big changes, now is when a big change would be necessary, right? It's like we're how many years in since the last big updates, when Blizzard kind of handed over the reins. That was like 2020-ish. And because of that, like there's just been these slow increments, which hasn't really changed too much of the game, which haven't really changed too much of the meta. And it feels like that's what a lot of people are pushing for, is like big changes, big deviations. That's something that the Balance Council can't really come together on. Like that's not what they're built for, unfortunately. They're built to iterate, they're built to refine, less so kind of come in with these big sweeping changes instead. Likewise, when it comes to kind of the broad strokes of what the balance patch wants to address here, outside of, you know, the philosophy of trying to buff whenever we can and less so nerf, is scouting. This is a big issue in a lot of matchups right now. Is scouting, I mean, everyone's talking about Protoss, everyone's talking about hallucinations because of the NG overcharge, especially in PvT and in other matchups as well. It is very easy to scout, to get those hallucinations, to open up Sentry, to see everything, and that does take away a lot of the strategy of the game. It takes away a lot of strategy, it takes away a lot of aggressive tendencies or aggressive builds, and it just takes away from the experience overall. This is maybe an unintended side effect from the NG overcharge change. I don't think many people were expecting it to be this good and to be this strong in regards to scouting, whether it's buffing the Oracle and the Sentry as well, both ways for the Protoss player to scout, to be active, and to get eyes on their opponent. So this also wants to try to address that, not just with Protoss, but with other races as well. Even does approach Zerg with that idea as well, which I can get behind, 100%. It is a problem. I think everyone's in unison when it comes to like, this is a problem. This has to be addressed, especially when it comes to hallucination scouts. How to approach it, how to try to address that. There are different ways. We have heard different approaches to that, but again, that's also something that is going to be addressed in the changes as well. Now, the first big change that he proposes, which kind of came out of left field, to be honest, was the return of the infested Terran. Like this to me was out of left field, and even Pig was saying how like, you know what, if this is too crazy, we can get rid of it. It's fine. Like it's just it was an idea just because, again, Microbial Shroud is the least used spell in the game. It's such a niche spell, and even then it's not amazing just because of the downsides of it. I know that there have been recent changes and recent buffs to the Microbial Shroud. For those who are unaware, just because we rarely see it anyway, in the recent patch, Microbial Shroud now actually latches onto units for like 2 seconds. So now when Hydra, which I feel like should have been the case from the beginning, but now if a Hydra, for example, goes into a Microbial Shroud, when it steps out of the Shroud, it's still covered in Shroud for, I think it is 2 seconds before it dissipates. So again, that helps in some way. But despite that, I think the goal here is to remove that, is to reintroduce Infested Terran. Not the Rocket Edition. For those that are maybe newer to StarCraft, there was the Infested Terran also went through some changes coming into Legacy. Eventually, like, it was rockets were added, and it had crazy anti-air. Pig wants to get rid of that. Likewise, he also doesn't want upgrades to influence the Infested Terran either. So because of that, the Infested Terran isn't going to scale well into a longer and later game, so you don't have to worry about that as much. Just wants to reintroduce that ability to the game as well. And again, he himself spoke about how, like, hey, like if it's too good, if it's too strong, just because it's an NG based units, then we can get rid of it. So he's very much on the fence about that change, and I think that might be like one of the more drastic changes that he's proposing. Other changes that he does propose, I know that Loco had a reaction video to this and he was against it. I would say I would push against Loco in that sense. Loco, he's been vocal about how he doesn't like the idea of spellcasters auto-attacking. He wants it to be a little bit more unforgiving. I would say it's probably better for the overall health of the game, for that to be the case, for the High Templar to have that auto-attack, and for other spellcasters to have that auto-attack as well. It's a lot more low skill friendly, or like, low league friendly, I should say, for the average player. So the idea here that Pig is proposing, spellcasters like the Raven, spellcasters like the Viper, just like the High Templar, and I believe the Infestor as well, will all have the equivalent of the High Templar auto attack. Basically what that means, it doesn't really add any meaningful damage. It means that if you ever attack move your army, then those units, they stay out of range, they don't rush forward, which was the case in years past before that change to the High Templar in Legacy of the Void. It is a way to help out micro, to help out players. It does keep them a little bit further back instead of them just wandering forward, because they wouldn't have an auto attack. So if you aim move in with a High Templar previously, they'll just walk into the opponent's army and they would just die. They would just like, very often you'd see High Templar straying on forward and dying as a result. So it was a nice quality of life change given to Protoss, and this is the idea of adding that to Infestor, adding it to a Raven, adding it to a Viper as well. I can get behind that. If you remember, the Arbiter does the same thing in Brood War. The Arbiter also has an auto attack which doesn't really do any meaningful damage, but it's there just to make sure that it stays at range, just to make sure that it's being kept hidden. It's a little bit more like, again, newer player friendly, or not even just player friendly in general here. there are some. I think Loco. I think he said it himself that he has more of like an elitist mentality. He wants to like keep it hard and make it hard and punish players that aren't able to properly control their spellcasters. But I'm like, there are other aspects of the game that are difficult. Like you don't need. I'm with Pig on this one. You don't need to force that added extra of difficulty onto everyone like that. Like I'm all for the quality of life change, but of course there is discussion for that. Likewise, he is going to be addressing the Spire. Now, when it comes to Muta play, if you're familiar with StarCraft 2 with ZVT, you would know that Lingbane Muta is very rare in the current meta. There's a lot of issues with ZVT currently. There's a lot of issues. I would say now would be the time to express my concerns. Again, we cost more StarCraft than anyone else out there, so I would say that we have at least some value in our opinions of the current game, the current state of the game. ZVT and ZVP, I would say, are both very stale. Unfortunately, the early game and the mid game is very stale in these two matchups because of certain changes to Zerg when it came to the changes to the Queen, changes to the Banelings, changes to the Ravagers as well. There have been a lot of changes when it comes to increasing the cost of the Queen, when it comes to reducing the effectiveness of the Baneling, and when it comes to reducing the morph time of the Ravager as well, where because of all those changes, we have seen an uptick in Roach-based openers in ZVT. I mean, hey, we spoke about Shin earlier, opening up Roach, then going into Ultra. Serral has been doing the same thing. This has been the case for a couple of years at this point, where Roach-based openers have been more trendy and less so Lingbane. Which is unfortunate because, again, everyone loves seeing Lingbane versus Bio. Like, everyone loves that dynamic, but we've been seeing less and less of that at the pro level. On top of that, where we do see it, it's going to be Lingbane into Hydra. Lingbane Muta has fallen off just because it's so unforgiving and so difficult to get away with as well. His answer to that is to reduce the build time of the Spire. I believe in the video he speaks on how the Spire actually takes the most time to build out of all other buildings out there. Like it's insane just how long it takes to build. And he says it here in the patch notes about how it's the slowest structure in the entire game outside of the Hive. The Hive is the only other comparable structure that takes as long as it does to morph in. Like, no other structure compares. So to help alleviate that, to help incentivize Muta play, Lingbane Muta once again, one of the changes that he does propose is the Spire build time. That would affect all matchups, of course, not just ZVT. That will also affect ZVP and ZVZ as well. Another thing that I should mention, and another kind of like quote unquote, another bit of like a philosophy to this, to these patch notes and to these changes, is that he doesn't want to stray away from he doesn't want to be afraid of changing things too much. I think an example of that is of making things too strong. He doesn't want to shy away from that, or even make things a little bit weaker. And he wants to try to at least bring this to the table, bring the discussion forward, and actually have people try it out. If something is too strong, if people can't deal with it, then of course we can wind it back, but he does want to try to bring that forward. So the idea of like Spire play being more accessible in ZVP, for example, may be an issue, but right now I don't think scouting is much of an issue in ZVP. That will change, and maybe there's going to have to be a lot more investments, a lot more dedication to scouting for tech and scouting for things like Aspire. True, that would make things a little bit more difficult for Protoss in regards to that, and that might not be a bad thing, is what we're getting at. Next up is he wants to give a change to Banelings here. Again, this was a nerf to Banelings done previously, and he wants to increase the HP of Banelings. This is going to be a big change for ZVT specifically, just because this is one of the reasons why Lingbane also fell off in the meta of ZVT and why Roaches did rise in prominence, because of the lower HP Baneling. To increase the HP once again makes it more viable, makes it more difficult for Marines to focus them down as well as they did previously, and again is trying to re-incentivize Lingbane instead of Roach Ravager in ZVT, which I feel like is a positive change as well. which I think is going to be positive. Now, when it comes to changing things up too much, the reason why I brought it up previously is because that is a big change here for the Overlord. He wants to reduce the movement speed of the Overlord from 0.9 to 0.8, and this will make it more difficult for Zerg players to scout. This is huge, especially in ZVZ, and he addresses this as well. And I do actually really like his thought process. I respect it in the sense that he spoke about how this will make it more difficult, for example, in ZVZ when it comes to scouting for 12 pools and scouting for 13-12s and scouting for early game cheese in ZVZ. True, that is going to be the one downside of this. It also makes it more difficult, of course, to scout the Protoss and scout the Terran, but that's the purpose, right? The purpose is to make it more difficult in general for all races to scout, to have a little bit more ambiguity, or to have to invest a little bit more into scouting, whether it's Overseers, whether it's Overlord speed as well. Whether it's additional sentries, additional hallucinations, additional oracles, so on and so forth. He in general, he wants to make it more and more difficult to scout, less easier, less free. This is a part of that. And he spoke about how this will impact ZVZ in a different way just because of the early game pool timings in ZVZ. And he mentioned about how, like, that might be true. If that's the case, maybe Zerg players start drone scouting. Which is never done, by the way. that was a really interesting thing that he brought up, just because in ZVZ drone scouting is literally never done, unless the only reason you're sending a drone across the map at the pro level in ZVZ is a spine rush, right? It's the spine rush, 100%. That would be the only reason you would do so. So the idea of drone scouting is so out of the norm. But like again, he brings up like, hey, like that might have to be the case, or instead of drone scouting, the idea of being forced to invest into earlier pneumatized carapace and earlier overload speed, which used to be the thing back in the day. That used to be more of a thing than it is now, which is never done unless you're going into like a German taxi, into a drop load all-in, going into early overload speed. But the idea of potentially drone scouting, or the idea of, hey, if something like 12 pools and 13-12s are stronger in ZVZ, the idea of the meta and the standard in ZVZ now being pool first instead of hatch first, right? And the idea of not wanting to shy away from that, not wanting to shy away from shaking up openers that much. Because currently, if you're unfamiliar, in ZVZ, hatch gas pool, it's the go-to, it's the standard. It keeps you safe against everything. It's the most economic opener, and it's the safest opener as well, because your overlord should scout any kind of aggression coming your way. Like, that is the go-to. There's unless you're being hyper aggressive and taking a chance, like, there's not really much reason to deviate. Like opening up hatch first, you should survive against everything, at least currently. But, you know, if it's more difficult to scout 13-12s, if it's more difficult to react to that sort of thing, then maybe pool first becomes the norm instead. You know, maybe the meta shifts in that direction. And the idea of not wanting to shy away from that possibility is interesting, because I feel like the gut reaction, this is what I mentioned before when it comes to pro players and their issue, is that for pro players to see that, their gut reaction would be like, whoa. Like, do you want pool first to be the meta in ZVZ? That's crazy. That's no. Like, we're not going to do that. I can see a lot of players pushing back against that sort of thing because it goes against the grain so much. But I like and it doesn't even sound like that big of a deal now that you think about it. It's like, oh, instead of going hatch first, you're going pool first just to be safe. But yeah, like, I'm for this sort of stuff. I like the idea of shaking things up in such a way, especially if it benefits the game, if it benefits the health of the game. Again, being the overall goal of making it more difficult to scout than it currently is for all races. Like, I can get behind that sort of idea. And then the final change that he was going for was the Broodlord. Again, just to fix the behavioral issue of the Broodlord and its attack rate, how it was fixed during the PTR, and then they got rid of it, which was kind of weird, and he wants to go back to it. Another big change that he's going for every race is he wants to revert a bunch of the Balance Council changes. Over the past couple of years, the Balance Council has been nerfing a lot of units, has been taking away from a lot of units for Protoss, Terran, and Zerg, and he's proposing the idea of reverting a lot of it. Not all of it, but reverting a lot of it. Reverting the changes to the Ravager. For those that don't remember, it was a couple of years ago at this point, but the Ravager build time was increased, and that took away a lot of Ravager-based all-ins. At least that was the goal. But really, it just hurt Zerg and meant that Zerg players had less aggressive options, and it didn't really have the intended change. Like, it didn't really bring forward that. So again, once to revert changes to the Ravager, to the Broodlord, to the Queen cost, to the Hatchery, to the Spore Crawler. The Spore Crawler right now is really strong, which takes away from like harassment potential from Oracles and Banshees. He wants to revert that change to make it weaker. So he wants to make the Spore Crawler weaker, wants to make the Queens cheaper, wants to make the Lurkers a little bit stronger when it comes to their HP. Again, these all reverted changes. The Lurker HP was related to the Disruptor, So the disruptors could still two shots. That's why the HP was reduced, but he's going to be reverting the disruptor as well. So, so there's going to be a lot of reversions there that he's proposing, which are interesting. I think for the most part, at least currently for the Zerg side of things, I can get behind it. I think I'm all for reverting the Ravager, the Queen, the Hatchery. I mentioned earlier that the biggest issue currently in ZVT and ZVP is how stale it is, just because right now there are less options. Straight up, there are just less options for Zerg players. So reverting the change to the Ravager, and also the Spire change that we saw earlier as well, and also the change to the Baneling, ideally this incentivizes now suddenly Ling Bane as an option in ZVT, suddenly Ravager all-ins in ZVP and ZVT as well, and of course the Spire being Mutaplay would be more viable as well. So all these changes are just allowing for more options for Zerg in all three matchups, whereas right now there are no options. Right now that's the feeling here. I say feeling. I'd say that is the issue. That is the issue between those matchups. Is how little options there are. This is why I've been vocal about this. Currently, I'm a Zerg player, by the way. Currently, my favorite matchup to cast is TVP. And the reason for that is because there is so much variety. There is so much variety right now in TVP compared to the other matchups, which is why as a caster, I actually enjoy covering and casting those matches more than the others. Which is crazy, but again, that's just the current state of the meta for ZVT and ZVP, especially in the early to mid game, which is really unfortunate. But that's the current state of things right now. Scrolling down, it does hit the Terran changes. I just realized I just mentioned that I wasn't going to go through it line by line, but may as well. I mean, there aren't that many changes. But we'll get through it. For the Terran, this is the most for some reason, controversial change. I think we spoke about this last time because we covered Harsam's changes, his balance changes, not too long ago. And this was the reversion of the Widowmine. For the Widowmine to now become invisible after the armory finishes. And I know there was a lot of pushback from the community on like Reddit and on comment sections, specifically from lower level players, saying that like this will make like TVP unbearable at the lower level. And I think most of the pro players and content creators agree that this is a good change for the higher level of things, but a lot of people are concerned with how it impacts the lower level players instead. And if you remember, I'll just reiterate what we said when we went over the Hearthstone's balance changes, was that this is not going to be the same Widowmine as it was previously. There have been so many nerfs to the Widowmine over the past 2 years. So many. Remember, the Widowmine radius was reduced, the damage was reduced. Now there's the targeting the targeting laser that didn't exist previously. Now there's a targeting laser for where the Widowmine is going to go. And now you also get a notification when the Widowmine burrows. If you remember, that wasn't the case previously. Not even when it shoots, but now there is an attack alert when the Widowmine burrows, so that also gives you even more of an alert. So this isn't going to revert all of those changes, only the armory ones. So I think this is something that's kind of like going over the heads of a lot of the people that are pushing back against this, is that this is not going to be the same Widowmine as it was previously, because there are so many other nerfs that already hit the Widowmine, and those aren't going to be touched. Just the armory change. So the Widowmine still has less radius, it still has less damage, it still gives that notification, it's still easier to micro against because of the targeting laser as well. Like, there are so many other nerfs that hit the Widowmine, not just this one. But this is also like the most visually obvious change, right? It's like, I'd like if the Widowmine did more damage and had a bigger radius, like I feel like it's maybe less obvious for people to like take that in and to process that. So meanwhile, earlier invisibility, like that's a little more obvious and a little more you can react to that a little bit harder, and in general, I think I'm for this change. I mean, I'm for this change. This is meant to help support and help buff TVP in the mid game. TVP does have its issues. I did say that it's my favorite matchup to cast. That is true, but it still has its own issues currently in regards to the mid game, in regards to how much strength a player can have if the early game goes their way. I think a good example of that is Classic versus Clem. Classic versus Clem at EWC, we spoke about how the early game did go the way of Classic every game, and he took a lead, he got ahead, and it was so difficult. I say so difficult, I mean, Clem couldn't come back. He couldn't recover from those losses, from that deficit in any game. He fell behind, he stayed behind, and he just couldn't recover from the earlier advantages that Classic had over him at Esports World Cup in their best of 5. And this is meant to just give the Terran player more strength in the mid game to fight back, to take these more efficient trades, to preserve. Specifically, what it does is it preserves Widow Mines. It means that when you're now you can be active on the map, and now you can be more efficient because now there's less of a chance that your Widow Mines are going to be dying. There's a higher chance that your Widow Mines, they survive these fights, they're able to recharge and have another, a second, a third Widow Mine shot going off as well. Obviously not 100%. It also means that Protoss players are going to be investing into detection a lot earlier, which is already happening, by the way. It's very currently in the meta. I mean, again, this is also why, like, at the highest level, this isn't going to be as much of a problem. But currently in the meta, it is very common to open up 3-gate blink robo on 2 bases before the 3rd. It is very common to get the earlier robo on 2 bases and very common to get the earlier observer as well. But what this means is that now you need an extra observer. Now you need more observers than previously because now you need an observer with the main army. Previously, you'd only have observers scouting, right? You'd have an observer across the map, you have one back at home. But now you need one with the army as well, right? So again, this basically what this means at the highest level is now Protoss players need more observers than previously. That's kind of what this means. And of course, they have to preserve the observer as well. And there's that counterplay where the Terran player could maybe focus it down, and then you don't have the observer, and then the Widow Mines can survive that fight. So again, like, I'm all for this when it comes to the highest level. I understand that this is going to be negatively impacting the lower levels though, for sure. And this is where I think there's a plan B change. The plan B change would be to change drilling claws to the armory instead of the tech lab. That would be like a compromise, which I'm all for as well. Like regardless whether it's one or the other, I think I'm all for it. Basically, what that means is that you don't have to add-on swap. You don't need a tech lab on your factory. You can be reactoring out Widow Mines, and at the same time, on the armory, because you don't need a tech lab on the factory anymore, you can start researching drilling claws, which means drilling claws is going to be more accessible, and the ability to have your Widow Mines be invisible is going to be more accessible as well. So that is the other option here, is either armory is done, bam, it's invisible, or the upgrade is on the armory, now it's more accessible. Both, one is more extreme than the other. I think both are heading in a good direction. Both are heading in a good direction. Whether it's one or the other, I mean, there's got to be a compromise. We'll figure it out. Hi. I guess there's another optional change here that reduces the Widow Mine build time. I don't think I'm for that. I don't think we have to quite go that far. Another change here that's going to be proposed is the Ghost. Now, of course, the Ghost is the biggest meme. It's how many years have we had the copy pasta regarding the Ghost, and how the Ghost, the late game Terran army to counter the Ultra, the Brewlord, the Infestor. The Ghost is a really powerful unit. It's a really powerful unit. I think there's a lot of agreement in how much strength the Ghosts have and how much strength it has and how it has too much strength. The Ghost has a wide array of spells and abilities that are all quite useful. On top of that, has an auto attack that is actually quite strong and quite powerful. So this is what makes the Ghost different from the High Templar and from the Infestor. Infestor doesn't even have an auto attack. The High Templar has an attack that doesn't do anything. The Ghost, outside of its spells, is still a powerful unit when it comes to its own auto attacks, when it comes to focusing down key units, when it comes to adding DPS just by default. That's another big strength that it has. On top of that, the durability. Currently, it takes 9 Banelings to kill a Ghost. That's just how tanky it is because it doesn't have the light tag. So that's also another reason why Ling Bane is deterred when you get into Bio versus Zerg, because the Ghost is just so sturdy and so tanky. Ling Bane falls off quite hard. So it's really powerful units, and I think for a long time people have been pushing to change it in some way. Here, the change is to add a light tag to the Ghost. This is a really huge change already. That's a massive change to the Ghost. To make it a light tag does make it more vulnerable to Banelings, does make it more vulnerable to Colossus as well. That would be a really huge change. There's a lot of implications to this as well. I don't know if I'm on board with this. I think the thing with the Ghost, because it's so good in so many different ways, I think there's a lot of ways to nerf the Ghost. I think there's a lot of ways to approach the Ghost and to try to address the issues that it has. This, I think, is one of them. I don't think this is the only way to address it, but this is going to be at least the change that Pig is going to be approaching with. Likewise, Likewise, you can see other proposed changes. He's like, he did propose that maybe instead of changing it to a light tag, maybe reduce the HP. True, reduce the HP of the ghost, to make it again more vulnerable. I think that is less of an extreme change, but a change in the right direction, I would say. Likewise, reduces DPS as well. Again, the ghost, like, just flat damage is crazy. it's crazy useful as well. So he does propose changing that and reducing that. And another big change here is the EMP redesign. I feel like this is a change that we've been asking for a long time. I remember like Yaku and I discussing this like a year ago, talking about how specifically pushing for the EMP being damage over time, quote unquote damage over time, and this is kind of what he goes for. In a sense, he's still the proposed change here is that EMP still maintains the instant energy drain against energy, but it turns into damage over time against shields. So it will still punish High Templar and Storm by bam, just instant EMPing and instantly getting rid of that energy. But against shield-based units, against against every unit, when it comes to the shield damage, that is over time instead. So it's still strong against the spellcasters, but it's less intense and less strong against the Protoss main army. And this is another problem in PvT, is that when the armies clash, when they engage, bam, all it takes is a couple of EMPs and you get rid of half the HP of the main Protoss army, which is crazy good. And it means, currently EMP is just so unforgiving as a result, where often a bunch of EMPs occur. Because they occur, Protoss army retreats. They have to, right? They have to just back off. They have to back off. Maybe they push forward with the High Templar, with the Storm, if they still have some energy remaining, but it forces them to disengage and then back off and retreat and then re-engage again once they have some more shields. It's quite intense, especially against Archons, right? Archons, they become almost useless as well because they're just their only shields essentially. And this is then the EMP, of course, is still going to do that same amount of damage, the same amount of shield damage, just over time instead, which does allow the Protoss army to still engage then, right? Like if it's damage over time, then they can still engage, still have some shields to work with, so they can still have a fight in them, or of course they can still retreat, they can still back off, they can still make that decision, but a decision is now available to them, whereas before, coming in with 0 shields is crazy, depending on the situation, of course. But I think this is a good compromise. I think this is a push that many people have been asking for a very long time, is damage over time for the EMP. So I can get behind that as well, for sure. Once again, for the Raven, auto attack, just like the High Templar, just like the Vipers, is what he's pushing for. Something that I find interesting here is he's pushing for surveillance mode. The idea of the Raven, just like the Observer and the Overseer, being able to just siege up and have extended range for vision, is an interesting idea. It just gives the Raven a little bit more value, coming into things and coming into your main army. It's an interesting change. I guess I'm for it. I don't really know how much it helps too much. It helps against Dark Templar defense and against defending against invisible units as well, for sure. That is going to be a big factor, I suppose. It does help out. And then in come all the reversions, right? Wants to revert some of the changes with the Widowmine. He wants to revert the Liberator. That to me sounds a little bit crazy. I don't think I'm on board with the Liberator reversion. I think the biggest problem with the Liberator, and it just has to do with the design of the units, is that it does limit map makers. Map makers, they have to bear in mind the range of the Liberator to make sure that there's no spots that it can be abused on certain maps, and it is such a pain, such a pain to work with. I've heard a lot of exasperations from map makers because of the Liberator as well, factoring in that has to be in the back of their mind when creating maps and when trying to construct certain things, to make sure there's nothing that can be abused too much. So increasing the range from 2 to 3 once again, we'll see, especially because that does promote more turtley play as well. So I don't know if I'm too much in favor of this change. I think this might be the one change so far that I'm maybe even the most against. Outside of that, reversion on the Ghost, this will decrease its supply from 3 to 2. Earlier and this is to compensate for the changes that are going to be made to the Ghost. This makes sense in my mind. Right now the Ghost does take up more supply, so there are less ghosts in the game. There are less ghosts in ZVT and TVZ and TVP armies. But if the Ghost is now suddenly going to be, you know, a light-based unit, right? If they're going to be more vulnerable, if more Ghosts are going to be dying, then it makes sense to actually have more Ghosts available. So this is like to compensate for that, from my understanding. Likewise, snipe damage increased from 130 and 40 psionic to a flat 170 instead, which will make it more stronger against, you know, units like Ultras, for example, Brood Lords will make more stronger in ZVT. But again, it's important to bear in mind that these buffs to the Ghost are in conjunction with the nerfs to the Ghost as well. Like, they all come hand in hand. Like, the reason why snipes are going to do more damage and they're going to be less supply is because they're going to be more vulnerable and more weaker as well, because of that light tag. So that's going to be the give and take there with the Ghost, which again we'll see. The other big one here is going to be for that's going to be the finale of the Terran changes. The other big one is going to be for Protoss. NG recharge nerf. The NG overcharge, of course, has been a big subject of discussion ever since its introduction. Unfortunately has led to certain issues in every matchup. Just because of, we spoke about it earlier, scouting, right? Scouting, because of the NG overcharge, is so easy for Protoss to gain here, and it takes away a lot from a lot of the games, from a lot of every matchup, really, including PvP as well. So we have some proposed changes to try to address that. First thing is that the NG recharge, the NG overcharge does produce less energy, so 75 instead of 100. That would also impact, I mean, that impacts everything. That impacts sentries, impacts oracles, impacts High Templar and their ability to have storms available as well. Specifically, it means that High Templar will no longer have 2 storms when they warp in, now instead 1, which would be huge. And again, that's also an issue right now, is how dominant High Templar and NG-based units have been plaguing the meta as well. Likewise, I mean, other options have been proposed here just in case, just to have like some different varying levels of change. Meanwhile, he does propose the surveillance mode for the observer to be decreased from 25% down to 15, once again to reduce the vision that observers and that Protoss is gaining. Another one is Oracle Revelation from 9 down from 12. So once again, Revelations is going to be smaller, and hallucinations here have 4 less sight. So hallucinations, they see less when they scout, so it's going to be more difficult to actually find what you're looking for, in a sense. I'm a little bit out of order here, but I think I do prefer Hero Marine's proposed change instead. Gabe, he made a reaction video to this and he gave his own thoughts, and his issue with this was that even if the hallucination has less vision, because because the duration is so long, they're going to be able to scout anyway. Gabe, he did emphasize how his issue with hallucination scouts is not how much vision they have, but it's just how long they last. Just their duration. So his proposed change was to reduce its duration instead of reducing the range instead, which I think I can, like, I agree with. I think I can get behind as well. He spoke about how, like, even if you kill one, like, bam, you get another hallucination moving out across the map, which the NG overcharge change is going to address. True, is going to address how many hallucinations there are. But if we have to pick between reducing its vision or reducing its duration, I think the duration might be the better option here, because again, like, even if they don't see it because it lasts so long, they can just double back. They can just double back around and scout it anyway. Regardless, a change will have to be made to the hallucination. I think that's what we're in agreement with here. Pig also added, like, the ability to hallucinate capital ships, which I think sounds fun. Currently, capital ships can't be hallucinated, so you can't hallucinate tempests or carriers. And Pig is proposing, hey, you know what? Let's let it happen. Try to trick people with it. Yeah, sure. I can get behind that.
I mean, if you can hallucinate the Colossus, then why not?
Yeah. The idea of deceiving your opponents by hallucinating a certain tech structure, a certain tech units, and trying to force an overreaction. I like the idea of that for sure. Another change that was proposed here was a change to the stasis trap from 80 seconds down to 90 seconds down from 170. The rationale here was it lasts too long, which I think I do agree with. It does last a long time, so it's going to be a change to the stasis trap duration. optional change is that instead it becomes a snare effect. I don't know if I like that. I feel like basically changing it to a fungal growth takes away from some of the unit identity, just because investors already have fungal, so giving Protoss fungal instead of a stasis trap, I think I like to delineate between the two. That's his other optional changes. Instead of reducing the duration, just make it a fungal instead, basically. But I think I'm for reducing the duration instead. And the final one is the Dark Templar attack delay after blink being removed, so they can just blink in and just attack straight away instead, which will help. Which I believe that is another Hearthstone change that he did propose. Meanwhile, when it comes to reversions, true, if you remember, he does plan on reverting things. Reverting the supply cost for the Disruptor from 3 to 4. This was an issue in PvT. Mass Disruptor was very much so a thing. This was like 2 years ago. I still remember the games on Gressfan with I'm talking 12 disruptors, non-stop Novas. This was an issue, and this is why the change was implemented, to get rid of Mass Nova, specifically in PvT. But he does want to bring this back, and likewise he also wants to revert the changes to the Purification Nova, so now it will do more damage. Now I believe the radius is still going to be the same as it currently is. This is just a change to the damage instead, at least currently, until there's another option here, though, where they might change the radius of the Nova instead. So here basically a straight buff here to Disruptors. Meanwhile, reverting the change to the Immortal, this was changed previously as well, just because of the Archon Immortal composition that was becoming very, very trendy and very meta. This was like last year, so it wants to revert the changes to the Immortal, and likewise revert the changes to the Tempest as well, increasing its supply cost, not decreasing, and increasing its attack range as well. So it does whenever it changes to Tempest, Immortal, and Disruptor. And again, this I would imagine is to help compensate for just lack of vision, lack of scouting, or again, just, I say lack of vision, lack of scouting, emphasizing the importance of these things and making you commit or fight even harder to get your scouts off, to get your hallucinations, to find out what your opponent's doing, to make that more of a challenge than it currently is. Which again, when it comes to the stated goals, I can get behind for sure. And that are the final changes here. Now, something that I did want to bring up here that I feel like is missed by a lot of people when it comes to these changes, regardless of what changes get proposed and how this list gets refined. I think for the most part, in broad strokes, I'm for a lot of these changes, for sure. There are some which I'm a little bit on the fence about, like the Liberator change, for example. I think I'm most on the fence about that change, more so than some of the others. Maybe the Disruptor change as well, just because of how PvT was looking. True. But something that really bothered me, there were two reaction videos, maybe there were more out there as well, but Hero Marine, Big Gabe, and Loco, they did have their own reactions to these changes, and something that they both brought up and that they both approached in a really weird way. They spoke about how, like, you know, regardless of what the changes are going to be or how we approach these changes, there needs to be testing, right? There needs to be testing, and testing needs to be done. And they were very much so dismissive, or they spoke about it in almost a way like it couldn't be done. Something that I'm personally really proud of is what we achieved together at the start of the year. For those that don't quite recall what happened, I say start of the year, it was around last year in November, during the off-season, during the most recent off-season after EWC 2024, during that off-season, the community, the tournament organizers, we all came together, and I'm really proud of what we were able to achieve. We, in unison, during that off-season, all changed our tournament map for TLMC. We all changed our tournament map pools to the TLMC maps. Out of any year, out of any year in StarCraft 2, I want to say that we tested the most out of any year out there. Like the TLMC maps got the most amount of testing in 2024/2025 than any year in the history of StarCraft 2, because all of the tournament organizers in unison, we all agreed to use the new maps. We all agreed to use the TLMC maps to test them in the lead up to the voting for TLMC for like a solid month, maybe 2 months. Like for a big period of time, we all agreed and we all did our own maps. We all had our own custom map pools. Like we were featuring like Sandworm, like Wardy was featuring like the Shazam, like lightning map. You know, we had the Monday Night Weekly guys that were doing their own map pool as well. Like in unison, all the online tournaments and all the online tournament scene, we all switched to the TLMC maps to test them. Specifically to test them out. Not just that, but the PTR, including the NG overcharge change, after EWC 2025, that PTR also got the most testing out there out of any other PTR in the history of Soccer 2, got the most testing as well, because likewise, in unison, all the online tournament organizers agreed to run our tournaments on the PTR, and on the PTR mod as well. Like we all agreed in unison to do those two things, and because that, again, I'm personally really proud that as together as a community, as like organizers, we got the most testing out there possible. I want to say even like I think it was Mana or maybe TLO. I think it was Mana even tweeted about it about that fact, about how much we had achieved together to make sure we got the best maps we got possible, to make sure we got the most testing that we could as well, to make sure there were the least amount of bugs coming into it, of course. But like, you know, the Cyclone bug still made it through regardless, which was a big shame and still plagues us here. But I was really proud of what we were all able to achieve. And likewise, I would say that I think it was Loco who said like, yeah, like only Blizzard can do like this kind of testing. Loco had a line where he's like, yeah, if you want to force all these players to play on this like proposed patch, like you have to run a tournament, and that takes money, that takes organization. Like no one's gonna do that. I was like, no, like we already did that. We when I say we, I mean ourselves, Dave Testa, Chicken Man, Wardy. I mean Wardy a little bit less so, because Wardy, he was like kind of locked behind OSC at the time. But for TLMC, he did switch his map pool as well. So Wardy a little bit, alongside TKL and the French boys. We all in unison did that
as well.
Yeah, true. Yeah, Pegasaur. Yeah, of course, Pegasaur as well. We all in unison were able to achieve that. I believe we can do that again here as well. So I would say that what Loco said was very like uneducated, or very just out of touch with what was already achieved previously at the start of the year. Where I believe that if a proposed balance patch, whether it's this one, whether it's another one, got turned into a mod, and if we all agreed to test, I would say that we can all agree to test it, and every online tournaments like that, if we can agree on a mod to test out these changes, we would do it. Like whether it's ourselves, Wardy, TKL, Monday Night Weeklies, all these tournaments would switch to that and would test that. So I would say that is not an issue, and I would say that that's why this discussion is important, because I already saw that Patches, for example, we'll get into that. Patches, he's already made a mod, his own mod, to be fair, with his proposed changes, and he's starting to run tournaments on that. If we can agree on a mod to test, and again, it'll be for testing, and we'd be more than happy to change, to adjust based on feedback, but if we can make a mod, and if a mod can be made, then I can very easily see all the online tournaments starting to do that, especially because we are entering the off season. That's the most important part. It was because of the off season that we were able to do all that testing on the TLMC maps, and we were able to do all that testing on the PTR. Now we have begun the off season. Now is the time to do these testings and to come together with a mod like this, and to run it all together as well. And I can very easily see that happening, especially because all these tournament organizers are all in touch with each other. We're all in touch with each other. We can all come to an agreement here, and we can all like work with this as well. And we all want to, right? We all want to do this because we've already done it. We've already done it once before. We'll do it again, especially when it comes to the new TLMC. That's probably also going to happen. We're all probably going to change our maps as well to the TLMC maps to try to get the most out of that as possible as well. So like the avenue to test all these changes is already there. We just need to agree on what changes we're going to test out. Like that's all we need. That's all we need first, and then we'll go for it for sure. When I say we, I mean the community, like the tournament organizers. They'll go for it 100%, especially because again, it's the off season. Now there's no EWC that players have to focus on. Players as well are also willing to play and test out these changes as well. I should emphasize that as well. Like it's not like players stopped playing in all of our tournaments because we were pushing for because we're forcing them to play on the PTR or forcing them to play on different maps. Like, no, they were willing to as well, because I mean, this matters, right? This matters. It affects us, it affects them, and because they're not working towards an EWC, because the off season, they're willing to do that as well. They're willing to try this out. They're willing to try out different changes and to try out different mods and to try out different maps as well. So I mainly wanted to like emphasize that. Again, whether these changes are proposed or whether other changes are proposed, like testing will happen 100%. I can almost guarantee that testing will happen on a wide scale, to benefit this and to try to refine this and to push changes forward as well. So that would not be an issue, which is also why, because I feel like those comments that were made, whether it's from Gabe, whether it's from Logo, whether it's from others, they were also made in such a way to like put down the idea of like, why are we even doing this? Like, why are you even proposing these changes? It's not your job. It's not Pig's job to do this. So why are you even doing it? Like a very, very like negative, a very like doomer pilled or doomer-esque. Where I would push against that and say like, no, it's important that this is done. And we know that we have to push for this. We have to make these changes because Blizzard isn't going to. Why are you acting? Why even bring that up? Like, there's no reality there. Of course, Blizzard's not going to do it. We have to do it ourselves, and we'll just do it. Like, we have. It's on us to step up and to kind of take that role moving forward with StarCraft and moving forward with StarCraft 2 esports. And that's why I would say that I respect Pig a lot for taking the initiative to do this. And again, as I mentioned, we haven't seen a revised draft of this. I would imagine because Dot just gave birth and he's looking after his son and all that's happening right now. But once we can get back to this, for sure I do want to try to push for this and promote this, and we'll have to assist wherever we can, for sure. And it's something to look forward to, I would say. Something to look forward to. And yeah, now would be the time. Now would be the time. When it comes to Pig's video, I think he promotes people to comment, to post their own proposed changes. What do you like? What do you dislike? What would you change? What would you adjust? How would you approach, how would you approach certain changes? I think I mentioned before, right? I think everyone agrees that the Ghost needs to be nerfed. How would it be nerfed? Hey, maybe you have your own ideas. Maybe you have your own ideas on how to approach the nerf to the Ghost, and you can propose it as well to Pig's video. As again, he's going to be compiling all of that and coming together with all of that as well. So now is our time. But with that, do we have anything else? All right, I think when it comes to the reaction videos, I think hold on, I think I have some notes here. I think Gabe, he had some certain certain addition. I think I spoke about it, right? Like Gabe's idea of nerfing the duration of hallucination instead of changing its the sight radius was really interesting, and I think I like that a lot more than Pig's proposed change. And I think in Gabe's balance proposal video, he emphasized how we already spoke about this, but he emphasized how because of how the balance council works, big changes would never be coming out of the balance council. Like they were built more to kind of refine and balance things, not to like change things too heavily in any kind of big way. So the change that StarCraft needs and is looking for would never come from the balance council. So I think he re-emphasized that. And I think I would agree with that as well, for sure. And then he wraps it up saying that what matters more than anything is like testing these changes and testing the proposed patch notes, which again I feel like we can facilitate 100%. So yeah, with that, I hope that we get to hear back from this in the future. I hope that we're, again, this is the initial draft. I'm hoping that we get a second draft soon. As I mentioned before, I'm fully understanding as to why we haven't gotten a second draft yet, just because there have been some big changes in Pig's life and with his family, so it's fully understandable why we haven't gotten one yet, but I expect to see one in the future, and then we can go back to this. We can revise it once again, and we'll see where we head from there, because I'm pretty sure Pig does plan on turning this into a mod in-game. Also, I kind of gloss over it. Another big change that happens, which helps us here, is that Blizzard, they have now allowed, we spoke about this last time, but Blizzard, they now have allowed for mods to be uploaded onto the arcade, whereas that was locked for a really long time. It was locked for a really long time. We spoke about this last time.
Important note, it's not fully open yet, and they made an update since that they still found issues, so they still revoked access for some people. But I think there's still still a group of people who can upload, so it's still like a little bit tricky. They're still working on it. It's not finished, but there is some hope there.
I will say that it's still being uploaded, as you said, there are still people that can upload mods, and Patches, he's been freely uploading mods the entire time, same with those working on SC Evolution. So it's not fully open for all people, but that is not going to stop this from being made into a mod. I'm pretty sure that won't stop this. Like, that has no bearing on the ability to actually make a mod and make a proposed balance change mod from these changes, just because we have been seeing a lot of people out there make those mods. I think Patches, he made his balance mod, and he also made a green art balance mod as well. I think there's a couple of proposed change mods that are being made over the past couple of weeks, so that's already becoming a thing. So yeah, look forward to it. Otherwise, that is going to be the end of these news. Let's go. That is going to be us wrapping up the new, our at least news here. From here, it is going to be us going over some of these tournament results. So we're going to be going on a break. And when we come back, we will be catching up on all of these tournament results of the week, whether it's modded tournaments, whether it's weekly open cups as well, and OSC tournaments, and even show matches. So we'll be going over that after the break. Cool. Otherwise, yeah, we'll see you soon after the break. Take this time to hydrate hydras, to massage your marines, and to stretch all your roaches. We'll see you soon after the break. See you soon.